The ghost zone had rules. Physics bent around ectoplasmic energy, reality shifted through spectral frequencies, and dimensional barriers held firm against most threats. Danny Fenton had learned to navigate that impossible realm over 2 years of protecting Amity Park from ghosts who'd forgotten what it meant to be human. He understood the rhythm of that otherworldly space, the pulse of green energy that sustained his transformation, the cold touch of the infinite realms against his consciousness, the way his ghost sense tingled whenever something crossed from death's domain into life's territory. None of that prepared him for the moment Pariah Dark's crown shattered the dimensional walls. The Ghost King's final attack hadn't been aimed at Danny directly. The ancient tyrant, desperate and cornered, had struck at the zone itself, a catastrophic blow that tore reality like wet paper. Danny remembered shouting, remembered Sam and Tucker's voices crackling through the Fenton phones, remembered the sensation of falling as green gave way to impossible colors that shouldn't exist. Then came the pull, violent and irresistible, dragging him through a wound between worlds that sealed shut the instant he passed through. Now he fell through normal sky above a city that definitely wasn't Amity Park, and his powers felt wrong. Danny transformed mid-fall, the familiar rings of light washing over him as Danny Fenton became Danny Phantom. White hair whipped in the wind, his black and white hazmat suit materializing as he reached for the flight that always came naturally. Except it didn't. His flight stuttered, caught, flickered like a bad connection. The green aura that usually surrounded him dimmed to barely visible wisps. Panic spiked through his chest as he dropped another 100 feet before finally, his flight engaged with a surge of effort that left him gasping. The city below was massive. Skyscrapers stretched toward him in steel and glass canyons that made Amity Park look like a suburb. Danny hovered unsteadily, his ghost sense suddenly firing with an intensity he'd never experienced. Not the cold puff of breath that signaled one ghost, but a low-frequency hum that suggested something vast and wrong with this entire reality's supernatural infrastructure. "Okay," Danny muttered, trying to steady his breathing even though ghosts didn't technically need to breathe. "Okay, not great, not good. Definitely not in Kansas anymore." His voice sounded thin in the unfamiliar air. He needed to figure out where he was, get his bearings, maybe find a library or... The explosion cut off his thoughts. 3 blocks away, a building erupted in flames. Danny's hero instincts overrode his disorientation, and he shot toward the scene with flight that felt like pushing through water instead of gliding through air. Something was definitely wrong with his powers here, but people were screaming, and that was a sound that transcended dimensions. He phased through the building's wall. At least intangibility still worked, and found himself in a bank vault where 4 armed men were loading cash into bags while civilians huddled against the far wall. One of the robbers had some kind of jury-rigged explosive device. Amateur hour by Amity Park standards, but these people looked terrified. "Hey," Danny called out, floating through the vault door in full view. "Hate to break it to you, but ghost attacks on banks? Pretty sure that's been done." All 4 robbers spun toward him, weapons raising. For a moment, Danny expected ecto-weapons, prepared for his dad's latest invention or Skulker's newest toy. Instead, they had regular guns, which they immediately fired. The bullets passed through Danny's intangible form harmlessly. He'd almost forgotten how satisfying that moment was, the shock on people's faces when they realized conventional weapons meant nothing to a ghost. He formed an ecto-blast in his palm, the green energy crackling weakly compared to his usual output, and fired a warning shot that knocked the nearest gun from shaking hands. "Ghost!" one of them screamed, which honestly, fair assessment. "Half ghost, technically," Danny corrected, advancing with what he hoped was an intimidating float. "And you guys picked the wrong day to..." Something hit him from the side. Not a bullet, not an ecto-blast, something web-like that stuck to his suit and yanked him sideways with surprising force. Danny yelped, instinctively going intangible, but whatever this substance was, it didn't phase through with him. He tumbled through the air, struggling against sticky strands that felt organic but definitely weren't ectoplasm. "Whoa, whoa, whoa," a young voice called out. "Intangibility. Okay, that's new. Usually the webs work on... Wait, are you glowing?" Danny looked up from his tangle of webbing to see another teenager in a red and blue suit clinging to the vault wall upside down. The suit had a spider emblem on the chest, and large white eyepieces that widened comically as they stared at each other. "Spider-Man," Danny blurted out, because even Amity Park had internet and news channels. Then his brain caught up. "Wait, Spider-Man is real? Where am I?" "Queens, New York, Earth, Sol System, Milky Way Galaxy," Spider-Man rattled off, still hanging upside down. "And yeah, I'm real. Question is, what are you? Because I fought aliens, robots, a guy made of sand, and a really angry rhinoceros, but I've never seen someone just glow green and walk through walls." The robbers, apparently deciding this was above their pay grade, bolted for the emergency exit. "Civilians first," Spider-Man said, dropping from the ceiling to web the escaping criminals to the floor with casual expertise. "Then we talk about the glowing ghost boy who just phased through a bank vault." He helped the terrified hostages to their feet, his voice shifting to something reassuring and warm. "You're all safe now. Just head outside, avoid the debris, and maybe don't mention the ghost thing to the press. I've got enough weird publicity." Danny finally tore free of the webbing, floating back to his feet. Well, hovering a foot above his feet. His powers still felt sluggish, like pushing against resistance that shouldn't exist. "I'm not here to rob a bank. I was trying to stop them." "Oh, I believe you," Spider-Man said, and Danny could hear the smile in his voice even through the mask. The whole, "Hey, ghost attacks are so last season" routine was pretty hero-coded. But dude, you just appeared over Queens glowing like a radioactive glow stick and fell through a building. S.H.I.E.L.D's going to have sensors pinging all over the place, and I'd really like to know what you are before someone shows up with the really big guns. Danny's ghost sense pulsed again, that weird low-frequency hum that felt nothing like detecting Skulker with a box ghost. This wasn't a ghost. This was something else, something mystical and vast that his senses couldn't quite parse in this unfamiliar reality. "I'm Danny," he said finally, because when a superhero asked questions, honesty seemed like the best policy. "Danny Fenton. And I have no idea where I am or how I got here, but I think something really bad just happened to the dimensions." Spider-Man's eyepieces widened further. "Oh boy. Okay, dimensions. That's a Doctor Strange problem." He shot a web to the ceiling, preparing to swing. "Come on, glowing ghost kid. We need to get you somewhere secure before..." The street outside erupted with the sound of sirens and shouting. Through the broken wall, Danny could see vehicles screeching to a halt, black SUVs with official-looking markings and armed personnel pouring out. "Before S.H.I.E.L.D. shows up," Spider-Man finished with a sigh. "Yeah, too late for that." Danny looked at the armed agents taking positions, at the spider-themed hero beside him, at the city beyond that thrummed with unfamiliar energy. He was stranded in a reality where superheroes were real, his powers barely functioned, and he had no idea how to get home. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. With great power comes great responsibility. "So," Danny said, trying for confidence he didn't feel. "What happens now?" Spider-Man glanced at the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, then back at Danny. "Now? We see if they're in a shoot-first mood or a talk-to-the-glowing teenager mood. And for the record, I'm really hoping it's the second one." The S.H.I.E.L.D. agents took up tactical positions behind their vehicles, weapons trained on the bank's entrance. Danny counted at least 12 of them, all wearing body armor and carrying guns that looked significantly more advanced than the robbers' hardware. His ghost sense continued its low, uncomfortable hum, but these agents didn't register as supernatural threats, just very prepared, very serious humans who probably had contingency plans for situations exactly like this. "Attention, enhanced individual," a voice boomed through a megaphone. "Remain visible and exit the building with your hands raised. This is your only warning." "Enhanced individual," Danny muttered. "Is that what they call superheroes here?" "It's what they call everyone who can do things regular people can't," Spider-Man whispered, pulling Danny back behind a support column. "Mutants, tech users, cosmic-powered people, anyone who registers on their senses. And trust me, you're registering. That green glow of yours is probably lighting up every supernatural detection grid in a 10-mile radius." Danny tried to dim his aura, focusing the way he did when going full stealth mode back home. The glow flickered but didn't extinguish completely. It's not usually this hard to control. Something about this place is making my powers feel sticky, like they're working through interference. Spider-Man's masked eyepieces narrowed in what Danny was learning to read as concentration. Different dimension, different rules? Man, that's going to make Dr. Strange's head explode, in a metaphorical way. Probably. He peeked around the column, and his whole body language shifted to something more serious. "Okay, here's the thing. Those are S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, which means they're professionals, but they're also really twitchy after the whole Sokovia thing. If you go out there glowing and floating, there's a non-zero chance someone gets trigger happy." The whole what thing? Long story involving a robot with a god complex and a city that got turned into a meteor. The point is, tensions are high. Trust in enhanced individuals is low, and you showing up unannounced is basically their worst-case scenario. Spider-Man shot a web to the ceiling, testing its hold. "So we're going to do this the fun way. Can you turn invisible? You mentioned ghost powers." Danny nodded, already fading from view. Invisibility came easier than flight here, maybe because it was more about bending light than manipulating energy. "Yeah, but they might have infrared or thermal imaging won't pick you up if you're actually a ghost. No body heat, right?" Spider-Man grabbed Danny's arm, or where Danny's arm had been, and grinned behind his mask. "Okay, this is weird. I'm touching something invisible. That's going on the list of strangest Tuesday ever. Hold on tight." "Hold on to..." Spider-Man fired a web line and yanked them both upward through the hole Danny had made entering the building. They burst onto the roof as S.H.I.E.L.D. agents shouted below, Danny's invisibility holding as Spider-Man swung them across the gap to the next building. The wind whipped past Danny's face, and he couldn't help the laugh that escaped him. Part relief, part exhilaration, part recognition of what it felt like to work with another hero who actually got it. They landed on a rooftop 3 blocks away, Danny materializing back into visibility as Spider-Man touched down in a crouch. "Okay," the web slinger said. "That was the easy part. Now comes the hard question. Are you actually a good guy, or am I about to regret helping you evade federal agents?" Danny landed beside him, feet actually touching the rooftop this time, his flight finally stabilizing. "I'm a hero. Back in my town, I protect people from ghosts that cross over from another dimension. The ghost zone. It's..." He gestured helplessly. "It's complicated, but I'm not here to cause trouble. I don't even know how I got here." "Right, the dimension thing." Spider-Man sat on the roof's edge, legs dangling over the drop. The casual confidence reminded Danny of how he used to sit on top of the nasty burger, watching over Amity Park. "So you're from another reality entirely. Not just another planet or timeline, but a whole different universe." "I think so. Everything here feels wrong. My powers work differently. My ghost sense is going haywire, and I've never heard of S.H.I.E.L.D. or Sokovia or..." Danny paused. "Wait, you knew I was a good guy before I said anything." "How?" Spider-Man's mask shifted in what might have been a smile. Because you protected those civilians first, made jokes during a fight, and when I webbed you up, your first instinct wasn't to attack me, but to explain yourself. Plus, I've got pretty good instincts about people. Comes with the job. The job of being Spider-Man. The job of being a 16-year-old trying to balance homework, heroics, and not getting killed by bad guys who are way out of my weight class. Spider-Man's voice softened. You're young too, right? I can tell. The way you move, the jokes, the whole trying really hard to seem confident thing. We're both just kids trying to do the right thing. Something in Danny's chest loosened. He'd been surrounded by heroes in Amity Park. Sam, Tucker, Jazz when she wasn't being overbearing, but they didn't have powers. They couldn't understand what it felt like to transform, to fight, to be responsible for protecting people with abilities that could just as easily hurt them. But this Spider-Man, whoever he was under the mask, understood that weight. 14 when I got my powers, Danny admitted. 16 now, laboratory accident involving a portal to the ghost zone. Got my molecules rearranged into something half human, half ghost. My parents don't even know what I am. Secret identity? Spider-Man asked, and Danny could hear the understanding in his voice. My best friends and my sister know, but yeah. Everyone else thinks Danny Fenton is just a normal kid with terrible grades, and Danny Phantom is a ghost who protects the town. Keeping them separate is... He trailed off. Exhausting? Complicated? Sometimes makes you wonder if it's worth it. Spider-Man offered. Yeah, I know that feeling. Peter Parker is supposed to be a nerdy high school student who takes pictures for the school paper. Spider-Man is... well, not that. And never the two shall meet, or my Aunt May would have a heart attack. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Two masked teenagers sharing the kind of truth that only came from recognizing yourself in someone else. Then the air around them turned cold. Not Danny's ghost sense cold. This was something else, something that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up even through his transformation. A golden orange circle of sparking light materialized in the air 10 feet away, expanding into a portal that revealed an interior of impossible architecture and a man in blue robes stepping through with an expression of stern concern. Well, the man said, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed. That certainly explains the dimensional alarms. His eyes, sharp and analytical, fixed on Danny with an intensity that made the teen hero want to go invisible again. Strange symbols glowed faintly around the man's hands. And Danny's ghost sense suddenly screamed. This wasn't a ghost. This was something else entirely. Something powerful. Spider-Man jumped to his feet. Dr. Strange, hey, this is probably not what it looks like. It looks like a spectral entity of unknown origin has torn through Earth's dimensional barriers and is currently saturating the local area with unregulated ectoplasmic energy. Dr. Strange's gaze never left Danny. So unless you have a dramatically different explanation, Spider-Man, I suggest you step away from the dimensional anomaly before it destabilizes further. Danny's hands lit up with green energy instinctively, his fight or flight response activating. I'm not an anomaly, I'm a person. And I didn't mean to come here. Something happened in my dimension and I got pulled through. Intention is irrelevant, Strange replied, moving forward with measured steps. His hands began to trace complex patterns in the air, golden light following his movements. What matters is that your presence here is creating ripples in the dimensional fabric that could attract far worse things than shield agents. You're broadcasting your signature across multiple mystical frequencies, and trust me when I say there are entities that would very much like to meet whatever just announced itself so loudly. The golden light formed a circle around Danny, and he felt pressure building against his aura, not painful, but constraining, like the universe itself was trying to put him in a box. Dr. Strange, wait, Spider-Man started. The Sanctum Sanctorum, Strange interrupted. Now, both of you, We need to contain this situation before something catastrophic responds to the dinner bell this young ghost just rang across the dimensional spectrum. The portal behind Strange widened, showing glimpses of a building filled with mystical artifacts and impossible geometry. Danny looked at Spider-Man, who gave a small shrug that somehow conveyed both apology and reassurance. "Going to Strange's place is better than shield custody," the web-slinger said quietly. "And if anyone can help you figure out what happened and maybe get you home, it's the Sorcerer Supreme." Danny's ghost sense pulsed again, that vast wrongness he couldn't identify. Strange's magical bindings tightened slightly, not threatening but insistent. He could fight, could go intangible and flee, but Spider-Man trusted this man, and Danny was lost, powerless in a reality whose rules he didn't understand. He let the green glow fade from his hands. "Okay, but I'm not an anomaly. I'm Danny Fenton." Dr. Strange's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Then let us hope, Danny Fenton, that you're simply lost and not the harbinger of something far more dangerous." He gestured toward the portal. "After you." Danny floated toward the impossible doorway, Spider-Man falling into step beside him with the easy solidarity of someone who'd been dragged into mystical situations before. As they stepped through into the Sanctum Sanctorum, Danny caught one last glimpse of the New York skyline, a city that wasn't his, in a world that didn't understand him, with powers that barely worked and no way home. But at least he wasn't alone. The Sanctum Sanctorum defied physics in ways that made even the Ghost Zone look orderly. Danny stepped through the portal into a vast entrance hall where staircases led in directions that shouldn't exist. Windows showed vistas of alien landscapes that definitely weren't New York, and the very air hummed with power that made his ghost sense vibrate like a tuning fork. Floating artifacts drifted past, a glowing orb, an ancient-looking book chained shut, something that might have been a crystallized scream, all catalogued and contained within Dr. Strange's mystical sanctum. "Whoa," Danny breathed, his head tilting to follow a staircase that curved upward into what appeared to be a different time of day. "This is impossible by conventional understanding," Dr. Strange finished, the portal closing behind them with a sound like reality sighing. "The sanctum exists partially outside normal space-time, anchored to Greenwich Village but extending into dimensions your science, or what passes for science in your reality, cannot measure." He gestured toward an ornate door that definitely hadn't been there a moment ago. "The library. We'll have privacy there, and the wards will prevent your energy signature from attracting further attention." Spider-Man stuck close to Danny as they walked, and the teen ghost appreciated the solidarity. The sanctum felt oppressive in a way the Ghost Zone never had. Not hostile, exactly, but aware. Like the building itself was watching him, measuring him, deciding if he belonged. The library proved to be a circular room where books floated in orbital patterns around a central table, their pages turning themselves as they cross-referenced information Danny couldn't begin to comprehend. Strange waved his hand, and the books scattered to the periphery, clearing space as another man, shorter, stern-faced, wearing similar robes, appeared carrying a tea service that steamed with something that smelled like herbs and ozone. "Wong," Strange said by way of introduction, "my colleague and the Sanctum's librarian. Wong, this is Danny Fenton, our dimensional visitor, and you know Spider-Man." "Hey, Wong," Spider-Man said with a little wave. Wong set down the tea with practiced precision, his eyes studying Danny with the same analytical intensity as Strange. A spectral entity. How refreshing. We haven't had one of those cause interdimensional incidents since the Dweller in Darkness affair. His tone suggested this was not, in fact, refreshing. "I'm not just a spectral entity," Danny protested, floating down to sit in one of the chairs, then remembering to actually sit on it instead of hovering. "I'm half human too. It's complicated." Strange took a seat across from him, fingers steepled in a gesture that reminded Danny uncomfortably of Vlad Masters when he was planning something. Then please, uncomplicate it. Start with your dimension of origin, the nature of your transformation, and precisely what circumstances led to your unannounced arrival in our reality. Leave nothing out. Danny glanced at Spider-Man, who'd perched on the back of another chair in a way that suggested sitting normally was against his religion. The web-slinger gave an encouraging nod. "Okay," Danny began. "So, in my world, there's this other dimension called the Ghost Zone. It's where ghosts come from, not like spirits of the dead exactly, but entities made of ectoplasm that exist in a realm that mirrors our world but operates on different physics. Think of it like," he struggled for a comparison, "like a parallel dimension made entirely of post-human consciousness given form through solidified ecto-energy." Wong and Strange exchanged a look Danny couldn't quite interpret. 2 years ago, I had an accident in my parents' lab. They're ghost hunters, inventors who built a portal to the Ghost Zone. The portal didn't work at first, so I went inside to check it out, and I accidentally activated it while I was still in the tunnel. The memory still made Danny's core pulse with phantom pain. The portal opened with me inside. I got hit with a massive surge of ectoplasmic energy that basically rewrote my molecular structure. Now I can transform between human and ghost forms. Half dead, half alive. The only half-hour in existence as far as I know. Strange leaned forward slightly. "Demonstrate." Danny took a breath and let the transformation happen. The familiar cold rushed through him, the rings of white light separating at his waist and traveling over his body. Black hair to white, blue eyes to green, regular clothes to his hazmat suit. The change that had once terrified him now felt as natural as breathing. Except here, it didn't. The transformation stuck halfway for a moment, flickering, before finally completing with a surge of effort that left Danny slightly winded. Strange's eyes glowed briefly with golden light, and Danny felt magical energy washing over him like invisible hands checking for injuries. "Fascinating," the Sorcerer Supreme murmured. "Your cellular structure exists in quantum superposition, simultaneously alive and dead, matter and energy, physical and spectral. It's not possession, not reanimation, but a genuine hybrid state. I've never seen anything quite like it." "Is that why his powers are glitching?" Spider-Man asked. "He said they felt weird here." "His powers are glitching," Strange replied, making quotation marks with his fingers, "because he's attempting to draw energy from a dimensional source that doesn't exist in our reality. Observe." He waved his hand, and a three-dimensional projection appeared in the air, a representation of different dimensions layered over each other like sheets of paper. "Every reality has its own mystical architecture. Your Ghost Zone," he highlighted one layer in green, "is a dimension intrinsically connected to your reality's physical plane. It provides a constant flow of ectoplasmic energy that sustains spectral entities." He shifted the projection to show a different dimensional structure. "Our reality has no Ghost Zone. What we have are the Dark Dimension, the Astral Plane, the Crimson Cosmos, and dozens of other mystical realms, each with their own energy signatures and laws. You're trying to power abilities designed for one system using a completely different infrastructure. It's like attempting to run software designed for one operating system on incompatible hardware." Danny stared at the projection, understanding dawning with sinking dread. "So my powers don't work right, because I'm literally not compatible with this universe?" "Your powers work," Strange corrected, "but inefficiently. You're burning far more energy than you should because you're forcing your abilities to function without their native power source. Given time and proper training, you could learn to draw from our mystical dimensions instead, but that would require extensive study of the mystic arts." "How long are we talking?" Danny asked quietly. Strange's expression was not unkind. "Months, perhaps longer. You're not simply learning new spells. You're teaching your hybrid physiology to recognize and metabolize entirely different forms of energy. It's possible, but it won't be quick or easy. The weight of those words settled on Danny's shoulders. Months. He'd been hoping for days, maybe a week. His friends, his family, his town, they'd have no idea where he was. His parents would be frantic. Sam and Tucker would think he'd been captured, or worse, Jazz would blame herself for not being there to help. "There's another problem," Wong interjected, setting down his tea with a soft clink. "The dimensional breach that brought you here. You said something happened in your dimension. A Ghost King's attack?" Danny nodded. "Pariah Dark. He's basically the most powerful ghost in the Ghost Zone. I'd beaten him before, but he came back for revenge. When I cornered him, he used some kind of desperate attack that tore open the dimensional barriers. I got pulled through, and the breach sealed immediately after." Strange and Wong exchanged another look, this one distinctly worried. "What?" Danny asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. "Dimensional barriers don't seal themselves," Strange said carefully. "They're repaired by the ambient magical forces that maintain reality's integrity, or they're closed deliberately by beings capable of manipulating dimensional fabric. If your breach sealed the instant you passed through, something closed it behind me," Danny finished, his core going cold. "On purpose. Or something wanted to ensure you arrived here specifically," Wong added. "Dimensional displacement isn't random. It follows pathways of least resistance, magical ley lines, or deliberate redirection. You landing in New York, specifically in a location where you'd immediately encounter Spider-Man and trigger our mystical defenses, suggests a degree of intentionality that concerns me greatly." Spider-Man shifted uncomfortably on his perch. "So what? You're saying Danny was sent here? By who? And why?" "Those," Strange said, standing and beginning to pace in a way that made his cloak swirl dramatically, "are the questions we need to answer. Because if your arrival was orchestrated, Danny Fenton, then someone or something wanted a half-ghost, half-human hybrid with dimensional displacement capabilities in our reality. And given the threats we face," the Sanctum shuddered. It wasn't a physical tremor. Danny felt it in his core, a wrongness that made his ghost sense scream with warning. Strange's hands immediately began tracing defensive sigils in the air, golden light blazing to life around the library. Wong moved to a bookshelf, pulling down a tome that leaked purple smoke. "What is that?" Danny asked, floating to his feet as Spider-Man dropped into a combat stance. Strange's jaw tightened, his mystical shields expanding. "Something noticed your presence, something from the dark dimension." He turned to Danny with an expression of grim concern. "Your ectoplasmic signature, it's not just incompatible with our mystical infrastructure. It's resonating with the dark dimension's energy in ways that are actively attractive to beings that dwell there. You're not just a dimensional anomaly, Danny. To certain entities, you're a beacon." The Sanctum shuddered again, and through the library's impossible windows, Danny could see shadows gathering in the spaces between realities, hungry shadows with too many eyes. "How do we stop it?" Spider-Man asked, webs already loaded. Strange's expression was grim as he expanded the protective wards around the library. "We don't stop it, we survive it. Wong, activate the Sanctum's full defenses. Spider-Man, fall back to the central seal. And Danny," his eyes met the young ghost's, "I hope your combat capabilities are more reliable than your flight. Because whatever's coming through, attracted by your energy signature, is about to test just how well a ghost can fight demons." Danny's hands lit up with green ecto-energy, weaker than it should be, but still present. He'd fought ghosts, government agents, and even Pariah Dark himself. Demons from a dark dimension. That was just Tuesday in the life of Danny Fenton. Even if this Tuesday was in the wrong universe entirely. The demon came through screaming. It burst from a tear in reality above the sanctum's library, a writhing mass of shadow and malice with too many limbs and eyes that burned with hunger older than human civilization. Danny's ghost sense went nuclear, the cold spreading through his chest so intensely it actually hurt. The creature fixed its attention on him immediately, and he understood with horrible clarity that Wong had been right. It was here for him. "Eldritch barrier!" Strange shouted, golden shields materializing between the demon and the library's occupants. The creature struck the barriers with force that shook the entire sanctum, cracks spreading through Strange's mystical defenses like fractured glass. Danny didn't think. He flew straight through Strange's barrier. Intangibility still worked. Thank the ancients, and hit the demon with an ecto-blast that made the creature recoil with a shriek that sounded like tearing metal. Weaker than his normal attacks, yes, but apparently ectoplasmic energy was ectoplasmic energy, and demons from the dark dimension didn't appreciate being shot in their multiple faces. "You can hurt it," Spider-Man called out, web slinging up to the ceiling to get a better angle. "That's good. Keep doing that." The demon lashed out with a tendril of solid darkness. Danny went intangible, letting it pass through him, then solidified to grab the tendril and pump it full of ice. His cryokinesis responded sluggishly, but the demon's limb crystallized and shattered with satisfying finality. Strange was chanting in a language that made Danny's ears ring. Golden magic weaving into complex patterns that began forcing the dimensional tier closed. Wong threw powder that sparkled purple into the air, creating a circle of containment that the demon couldn't cross without burning. It took 3 minutes of coordinated assault. Danny blasting, Spider-Man webbing, Strange binding, Wong banishing, before the creature finally dissolved back into shadow with a final, frustrated wail. The tear sealed shut with a sound like a book slamming closed, and silence fell over the library. Danny landed hard, his transformation flickering. The fight had drained him more than it should have. Back home, a single demon would have been easy. Here, he felt like he'd just gone 10 rounds with Skulker. "That," Wong said, brushing purple powder from his robes, "is precisely the problem I was referring to." Strange's expression was thunderous as he examined the space where the demon had emerged. "Your ectoplasmic signature is like blood in water to dark dimension entities. They're drawn to the energy because it's similar enough to their native dimension's power to be familiar, but different enough to be intriguing. That one was a scout, now that it's reported back to whatever hierarchy exists in those shadows. More will come," Danny finished, his heart sinking. "Great. So I'm not just powerless, I'm also a walking target for interdimensional demons. Anything else I should know?" The answer came in the form of his phone, his actual phone, miraculously still functional in this universe, buzzing in his pocket. Danny pulled it out to see a news alert notification. The screen showed shaky footage from someone's phone camera, a glowing green figure firing energy blasts at a shadowy creature above what the caption identified as Greenwich Village magical incident. The video had already gone viral. 3 million views in 10 minutes. "Oh no," Danny whispered. Spider-Man leaned over his shoulder to look. "Oh no is right. Danny, that's you. Like, clearly, obviously you. And S.H.I.E.L.D. definitely monitors social media for exactly this kind of thing." As if summoned by the mention, Strange's mystical alarm system chimed with a different tone. The Sorcerer. Supreme waved his hand, and a projection appeared showing the street outside the sanctum, black SUVs pulling up, armed S.H.I.E.L.D. agents deploying, and a woman in professional attire stepping out with a kind of expression that promised no nonsense and fewer second chances. Agent Maria Hill, Strange identified with a sigh. Acting director of S.H.I.E.L.D. in Fury's absence, and she's brought friends. He looked at Danny with something approaching sympathy. "I can ward the sanctum against their entry, but that will only delay the inevitable. S.H.I.E.L.D. has resources that make persistence an art form. Danny watched through the projection as Agent Hill spoke into a communication device, more vehicles arriving to establish a perimeter. What do they want? You, Spider-Man said quietly. Or more specifically, they want you registered under the Sokovia Accords. After the Accords were signed, anyone with enhanced abilities operating in the United States has to register with the government. Real identity, powers, limitations, everything. It's supposed to provide accountability, but he trailed off uncomfortably. But it means giving up your secret identity, Danny finished. The horror of that concept settled over him like a weighted blanket. If S.H.I.E.L.D. knew he was Danny Fenton, they'd investigate everything. They'd find his parents, his friends, his sister. They'd discover the ghost zone. Probably want to study it, or him. And if word got back to his home dimension that he was part ghost, his parents would... He couldn't finish that thought. Strange was watching him carefully. The Accords are law, but they're not without controversy. The Avengers themselves split over the issue. Tony Stark and his faction supported registration. Steve Rogers opposed it strongly enough to become an international fugitive rather than comply. And you? Danny asked. Where do you stand? I stand in a gray area, Strange replied with a slight smirk. The Sanctum Sanctorum exists partially outside conventional jurisdiction, and threats to magical reality don't respect national borders. S.H.I.E.L.D. knows better than to press the issue with the masters of the mystic arts. But you, Danny, are not a sorcerer. You're an enhanced individual who has now appeared on every supernatural detection grid on the eastern seaboard and engaged in public combat with an extra-dimensional entity. They won't ignore you. Danny looked down at his hands, still glowing faintly with ectoplasmic energy. Back in Amity Park, keeping his secret identity had been a constant struggle, but a manageable one. Here, it seemed impossible. One fight, one viral video, and suddenly he was known to an entire organization dedicated to tracking people exactly like him. What happens if I don't register? He asked. Spider-Man shifted uncomfortably. Legally, you become a vigilante operating outside the law. They can detain you, potentially arrest you, and if you fight back. He didn't finish, but Danny understood. Resisting arrest from federal agents was a good way to end up in a cell, or worse. And if I do register, then they own you, a new voice said. Danny spun to see a man step out of shadows that definitely hadn't been there before. He wore a suit of red and black armor that gleamed in the library's mystical light, and his masked face was set in grim disapproval. Spider-Man immediately tensed, dropping into a combat stance. Daredevil, Spider-Man said, surprise evident in his voice. How did you get past the Sanctum's wards? I didn't, the man, Daredevil, replied. Strange let me in. We had an arrangement about mystical incidents in Hell's Kitchen. He turned his attention to Danny, and even through the mask, Danny could feel the intensity of his regard. I heard the alerts, saw the footage. A kid with powers trying to do the right thing and getting painted as a threat for his trouble. That sound familiar to anyone? Strange raised an eyebrow. I wasn't aware you took interest in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s registration efforts, Matthew. I take interest when they try to force teenagers into government databases, Daredevil countered. The Accords are supposed to provide accountability, but they've been used as a weapon more often than a shield. Danny's not from this world. He doesn't owe our government his identity or his freedom. He also can't stay hidden, Strange pointed out, not with his energy signature attracting attention from both technological and mystical sources. Invisibility won't help when you're broadcasting your presence across multiple spectrums. Danny felt like a ping-pong ball being batted between different adults with different agendas. Can everyone stop talking about me like I'm not here? His voice came out sharper than intended, frustration and fear mixing into something close to anger. I didn't ask to come here. I didn't ask to be a beacon for demons or a target for your government. I just want to get home to my family and my friends and my own dimension where my powers actually work, and I don't have to choose between giving up my identity or becoming a criminal." Silence fell over the library. Spider-Man was the first to speak, his voice gentle. "Danny, I get it. When I first got my powers, Mr. Stark wanted me to sign the Accords too. I did it because I trusted him, because I thought accountability was the responsible thing. But I was also lucky. I had support, resources, a mentor. You don't have any of that here. Whatever you decide, it should be your choice, not something forced on you by circumstance." Agent Hill's voice echoed from outside, amplified by technology. "Attention occupants of 177A Bleecker Street. We know you're harboring an unregistered enhanced individual. Surrender the subject peacefully, or we will obtain a warrant and extract them by force. You have 30 minutes to comply." Danny looked at Strange, at Spider-Man, at Daredevil, at Wong, still clutching his banishment tome. Heroes, all of them, but bound by different codes and different loyalties, and none of them could make this decision for him. "If I register," Danny said slowly, thinking it through, "S.H.I.E.L.D. gets my real name. They investigate me, find out about my dimension, possibly find ways to reach it. They'd want to study me, maybe study my family's technology. And if something happens, if I need to protect someone or fight a threat, I'd have to wait for permission, follow protocols, operate within their rules." "Yes," Strange confirmed, "and if I don't register, I'm an outlaw. They'll hunt me, try to catch me, and anyone who helps me becomes complicit in harboring a fugitive." "Also, yes." Danny's ghost sense pulsed again. Not a threat, just the constant hum of this universe's wrongness against his spectral nature. He thought of his parents who hunted ghosts but loved their son. He thought of Sam and Tucker, who kept his secret even when it was dangerous. He thought of Jazz, who'd figured it out on her own and chosen to protect him. He thought of what Spider-Man had said, "With great power comes great responsibility." But responsibility to who? To a government in a universe that wasn't even his? Or to the people back home who needed him to find a way back? "I'm not registering," Danny said finally. "Not because I want to break your laws, but because I'm not from here. This isn't my world, and I won't let your government claim jurisdiction over me or my identity or my dimension when they have no right to any of it. I'll stay hidden, work with Dr. Strange to figure out how to get home, and if demons keep coming because of my energy signature, I'll help fight them. But I'm not giving S.H.I.E.L.D. my name." Strange nodded slowly, something like approval in his eyes. "Then you'll need to stay within the Sanctum's wards. They can't enter without a warrant, and by the time they obtain one, we'll have found a way to mask your signature more effectively. And break the law while we're at it," Wong added dryly. "How delightful." Daredevil's masked face turned toward the projection showing S.H.I.E.L.D.'s perimeter. "They'll escalate. They always do. Be prepared for that." Danny was about to respond when his phone buzzed again. Another news alert, but this one made his blood run cold. "Ghost hero saves civilians from bank robbery. But who is he?" Below the headline was a clearer photo, taken from street level during his first encounter with the robbers. His face was visible, his white hair glowing, his green eyes bright with determination. The photo had been analyzed, enhanced, and already people online were speculating about his age, his origins, his nature. A 16-year-old ghost boy, now wanted by the government of an entire universe that wasn't his home. "Welcome to life as an unregistered hero," Spider-Man said softly. "It's going to get complicated." Danny stared at the photo of himself. Danny Fenton, hero of Amity Park, now fugitive in the Marvel Universe, and wondered if he'd just made the biggest mistake of his afterlife. Outside, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s timer ticked down, and somewhere in the spaces between dimensions, more shadows began to gather, drawn to the beacon that couldn't stop shining, The Sanctum's training room existed in a pocket dimension where time moved differently and collateral damage was mathematically impossible. Danny appreciated that last part especially, given that his first attempt at channeling Marvel Universe mystical energy resulted in an explosion that turned his ectoplasmic blast purple and sent him flying backward through 3 walls that immediately repaired themselves. "Again," Strange said, not unkindly, but with the impatience of someone who'd mastered reality-bending magic and couldn't quite understand why a teenager with ghost powers was struggling. "You're trying to force your ectoplasmic energy through the pathways instead of letting it flow. The mystic arts aren't about domination. They're about harmony with the dimensional forces you're channeling." "Easy for you to say," Danny muttered, floating back to his starting position. His hands still tingled from the backlash, and his ghost core felt like it was trying to process information in a language it didn't speak. "You're working with magic designed for this universe. I'm trying to make my powers run on someone else's operating system, remember?" It had been 6 hours since S.H.I.E.L.D. established their perimeter outside the Sanctum. 6 hours of Strange teaching Danny the fundamentals of mystical energy theory, while Wong monitored the wards and Spider-Man, who'd insisted on staying, divided his time between homework and keeping watch through the impossible windows. 6 hours of Danny learning that being half ghost in the Marvel Universe meant starting from scratch. Strange traced a glowing symbol in the air. The principle remains the same across dimensions. Your ectoplasmic energy is simply solidified consciousness given form through spectral physics. Our mystical dimensions provide different forms of energy. Vishanti's light, Cyttorak's crimson bands, even the dark dimension's corrupting power, but they all respond to will and intention. You already know how to impose your will on energy. You simply need to learn which dimensional sources to draw from. Danny focused, feeling for the ghost zone connection that wasn't there. Instead, he tried what Strange had shown him, reaching out with his consciousness to touch the edges of the mystical dimensions that surrounded Earth, like invisible currents. The Vishanti's energy felt warm and golden, completely alien to his cold, ectoplasmic nature. Cyttorak's power burned with aggressive force that made his ghost sense recoil. But there, beneath both, was something else. The dark dimension, it felt familiar. Not comfortable, but recognizable in a way the other sources weren't. Cold, like ectoplasm. Fluid, like the ghost zone's energy, but hungry in ways that made Danny's core shudder with warning. Yet when he reached for it tentatively, his powers responded. His ecto-blast formed easier, burned brighter, felt more like home. "Don't," Strange said sharply, his hands shooting out to sever Danny's connection to the dark dimension with a pulse of golden light. "Never draw from that source. The dark dimension is ruled by Dormammu, an entity that consumes entire realities. Its energy is corrupting by nature. Every use binds you more tightly to its influence. That's how it claims sorcerers. That's how it claimed." He trailed off, jaw tight. "Claimed who?" Danny asked quietly. Strange's expression flickered with old pain. "Someone who believed they could use the dark dimension's power without consequences. They were wrong. Don't make the same mistake." Danny pulled back completely, chastened. "Then what do I use? The Vishanti feels wrong, Cyttorak feels dangerous, and apparently the only energy that actually works with my ghost powers is forbidden." "The astral plane," Wong interjected, entering the training room with a fresh pot of tea that somehow stayed perfectly level despite the dimension's shifting gravity. "It's the realm of consciousness and spirit, closer to your spectral nature, without the corruption risk. Drawing from it won't feel natural at first, but it's compatible with your hybrid physiology." Strange nodded, already tracing new symbols. "Show him the resonance technique." What followed was an hour of the most frustrating meditation Danny had ever experienced. Sitting still while trying to feel the astral plane's energy was like trying to hear a whisper in a hurricane. His ghost core kept reaching for the ghost zone that wasn't there, kept finding that tempting familiarity in the dark dimension's cold hunger, kept rejecting the astral plane's strange, not quite physical essence. But gradually, painfully, Danny began to understand. The astral plane wasn't ectoplasm, but it was similar. Energy given form by consciousness, existing outside physical law. When he stopped trying to force it to feel like home and instead accepted it as a different dialect of the same language, his powers began to respond. His ecto-blast formed with astral energy, woven through it. Silver blue instead of green, but just as potent. His flight smoothed out, supported by the astral plane's timeless currents instead of ghost zone physics. "Better," Strange said, and Danny heard genuine approval in his voice. "You're adapting faster than I expected. Most sorcerers take months to successfully channel from a new dimensional source. Most sorcerers aren't half-dead teenagers whose powers are literally survival mechanisms," Danny replied, forming another blast and watching it crackle with silver blue energy. "My body wants to work. Just needed to figure out how." Spider-Man, watching from the corner where he'd been studying AP Calculus, set down his textbook. That looks way cooler than the green, by the way. Very mystical ghost warrior aesthetic. The internet would love it. "The internet already thinks I'm either an alien, a mutant, or a demon," Danny said, but he couldn't help a small smile. The SHIELD situation outside remained tense. Agent Hill had obtained her warrant, but Strange's wards held firm, creating a standoff that couldn't last forever. Yet for this moment, in this impossible room, Danny felt like he was making progress. Then his ghost sense exploded. Not the gentle pulse of a nearby spirit. Not even the violent alarm of the demon from earlier. This was a tidal wave of wrongness that drove Danny to his knees, his core screaming warnings that translated to one simple message: run. Strange's hands blazed with defensive magic immediately. "Wong, seal the training dimension. Spider-Man, fall back to..." Reality tore open. The rift was massive, stretching 20 feet across and leaking darkness that made the earlier demon look like a shadow puppet. What emerged wasn't a creature. It was hunger given form, a piece of the dark dimension itself that had broken through Earth's barriers and taken shape for one purpose: to devour Danny Fenton. It followed the resonance, Wong shouted over the sound of reality screaming. When he touched the dark dimension earlier, even briefly, he created a connection. The entity surged forward, tendrils of absolute darkness reaching for Danny with terrifying intelligence. Strange threw up barriers that the thing simply absorbed, golden magic disappearing into endless black. Spider-Man's webs caught fire from proximity alone, dissolving before they could stick. Danny acted on instinct. He flew straight at the entity, hands blazing with his newly adapted astral energy blasts, and fired everything he had. The silver-blue ectoplasm struck the darkness and, impossibly, hurt it. The entity recoiled with a sound like dying stars, its form flickering. "The astral energy," Strange called out, his own magic shifting to match Danny's frequency. "It's anathema to the dark dimension. Keep firing." Danny didn't need to be told twice. He poured everything into his blasts, drawing from the astral plane with growing confidence, even as the entity tried to adapt, tried to consume, tried to reach him with tendrils that promised oblivion. Strange and Wong flanked him, their golden magic interweaving with his silver-blue power in a pattern that felt like music, different notes creating harmony. Spider-Man couldn't touch the entity, but he could web the training room's floating debris and hurl it at the rift, disrupting the darkness's cohesion. "Hey, Cosmic Horror from Dimension X, how about you go back to lurking in existential dread where you belong?" The combined assault drove the entity back toward the rift. Strange began the sealing ritual, his hands moving in patterns so complex they left afterimages in the air. Wong channeled power into anchoring points that would force the breach closed. And Danny, drawing on reserves he didn't know he had, fired one final blast that struck the entity's core. It shrieked, a sound that existed in frequencies no human should hear, and imploded back through the rift. Strange's sealing ritual snapped shut like a bear trap, and the dark dimension's presence vanished with a thunderclap that left everyone's ears ringing. Silence. Danny floated down slowly, his transformation flickering with exhaustion. He'd done it. They'd done it. He'd actually channeled Marvel Universe mystical energy and used it to fight off a threat from the dark dimension itself. So why did Strange look so worried? That, the Sorcerers Supreme said quietly, was a mindless one, a relatively minor entity in the dark dimension's hierarchy. It came through because Danny's brief contact with that dimension, combined with his unique ectoplasmic signature, created a beacon that Dormammu's realm interpreted as an invitation. But we stopped it, Spider-Man pointed out, pulling off his mask to reveal Peter Parker's concerned face. Danny's new powers worked. That's good, right? We stopped one, Wong corrected grimly. But now the dark dimension knows Danny's signature, knows his energy tastes like a dimensional hybrid that shouldn't exist, knows he's here, learning to channel mystical power, broadcasting his presence across multiple spectrums. Danny felt his core go cold. You're saying that by learning to adapt my powers, I'm making myself a bigger target. Strange met his eyes with an expression of deep concern. I'm saying that your presence in our reality is creating ripples that attract increasingly dangerous attention. The longer you stay, the more you learn to harness our dimensional energies, the more threats will come seeking you. First demons, now mindless ones. Next could be... The Sanctum shuddered. Not from another attack, from something else entirely. Strange's expression shifted from concern to outright alarm as mystical alarms began chiming throughout the building in patterns Danny hadn't heard before. What is that? Danny asked, though part of him already knew the answer wouldn't be good. Strange moved to a mystical viewing portal, gesturing it open to show nothing. Empty space where reality should be. That, he said slowly, is a tear in the dimensional fabric. Not a breach, a wound. Something is cutting through the barriers between realities with deliberate precision. His hands began tracing defensive patterns. And whatever's doing, it knows exactly where to find you. Through the viewing portal, Danny watched as the wound in reality began to widen, revealing glimpses of a dimension that wasn't the dark dimension, wasn't the ghost zone, wasn't anything he recognized. And through that wound, something vast and ancient turned its attention toward Earth, toward the Sanctum Sanctorum, toward Danny Fenton, the half-ghost boy who'd become the most interesting anomaly in Marvel's multiverse. I think, Peter said, his voice very small, we're going to need backup. Danny couldn't argue with that, because whatever was coming through that wound in reality felt older than ghosts, older than demons, old as the concepts that separated life from death. And it was coming specifically for him. The entity that emerged from the dimensional wound wasn't a demon or a mindless one. It was something far worse. A collector. Danny recognized the type, if not the specific being. The Ghost Zone had entities like this, ancient observers who catalogued anomalies, studied impossible things, and claimed specimens that defied their understanding of reality. This one manifested as a figure wrapped in robes made of starlight and void, its face hidden behind a mask of crystallized time, and it spoke with a voice that echoed across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Fascinating, it said, the word reverberating through the sanctum like a bell tolling. A hybrid existence, death and life in superposition. A dimensional refugee broadcasting signatures across incompatible mystical spectrums. The probability of such an occurrence is... It tilted its head, and Danny felt the sensation of being analyzed down to his quantum state. Statistically impossible, yet here you are. Strange stepped between Danny and the entity, golden magic blazing around his hands in complex defensive patterns. Identify yourself and state your purpose, or leave this dimension immediately. You're violating the treaty between Earth and the Collector Core. Treaties apply to standard dimensional interactions, the Collector replied, its attention never leaving Danny. This situation is non-standard. The boy's ectoplasmic signature is creating instabilities in the dimensional barriers. Minor now, but escalating. Left unchecked, his presence could weaken the boundaries between realities enough to allow catastrophic incursions. I've come to claim him for study before he becomes a multiversal threat. I'm a person, not a specimen, Danny shouted, his hands lighting up with silver-blue energy. The astral-infused ectoplasm crackled with more power than before. Apparently, channeling mystical energy while terrified was excellent motivation for rapid improvement. The Collector seemed amused. Persons can be specimens. The two concepts are not mutually exclusive. You would be kept comfortable, treated well, and your unique nature preserved for future study after your inevitable dimensional collapse. After my what? Wong moved to Strange's side, defensive glyphs appearing in the air around them. The boy is under our protection. The masters of the mystic arts do not surrender refugees to interdimensional collectors, regardless of their classification status. Then you doom your reality to incremental destabilization, the Collector stated with clinical detachment. The half-ghost's energy signature is incompatible with your dimensional framework. Each time he uses his powers, each time he draws from your mystical dimensions, he creates microfractures in the barriers that separate realities. Given enough time, weeks, perhaps months, those fractures will compound until your Earth becomes a nexus point for dimensional bleeding. Entities from countless realities will find pathways through the weakened barriers. Your planet will become a battleground for interdimensional conflicts. Strange's jaw tightened, and Danny saw something flicker in the Sorcerers Supreme's expression. Not doubt exactly, but concern. You're suggesting Danny's presence here is inherently destructive. I'm stating a measurable fact, the Collector replied. Observe. It waved a hand, and a holographic projection appeared showing Earth surrounded by dimensional barriers, thin membranes of reality that separated the planet from other dimensions. Where Danny's energy signature pulsed, tiny cracks appeared in those barriers. They were healing, slowly, but new cracks formed faster than old ones could seal. Danny stared at the projection, horror settling in his core. I'm breaking your universe just by existing here. By existing here and using powers designed for different dimensional physics? Yes, the Collector confirmed. It's not malicious, it's simply incompatible existence. Like introducing an element that doesn't belong in a stable compound. The structure begins to break down. Spider-Man, Peter, stepped forward, mask off, and expression fierce. There has to be another solution. We don't just hand people over to cosmic entities because they're inconvenient. That's not what heroes do. Heroes preserve their reality, the Collector countered. Sentiment is admirable but irrelevant when measured against multiversal stability. Strange was studying the projection intently, his analytical mind clearly working through the problem. The fractures are concentrated around areas where Danny channels mystical energy if he stopped using his powers entirely. The damage would slow but not stop, the Collector interrupted. His ectoplasmic core constantly radiates energy. Suppressing his powers would extend the timeline but not prevent the inevitable outcome. Danny felt the walls closing in. He was trapped in a universe that was slowly rejecting him at a fundamental level. His very presence a poison to reality's stability. The ghost zone had been trying to kill him for 2 years, but at least there he could fight back. Here, just existing was the threat. What if he goes home? Peter asked desperately. If we find a way to send Danny back to his dimension, the fractures would heal, right? The collector paused, and for the first time, Danny heard something like interest in its multi-dimensional voice. That is the optimal solution. Return the anomaly to its native dimension, seal the pathway permanently, allow this reality's barriers to repair themselves. It turned its masked face towards Strange. Can you create such a pathway, Sorcerer Supreme? Strange's hands were already moving, mystical calculations appearing in the air as golden light traced complex equations. Theoretically, yes. I'd need to identify Danny's home dimension's unique signature, create a stable bridge across the dimensional gulf, and ensure the pathway sealed behind him to prevent further contamination. The difficulty is... He paused, symbols shifting and reconfiguring. The difficulty is that I've never encountered Danny's specific dimensional signature before. The ghost zone doesn't appear in any of our mystical charts or interdimensional maps. It exists in a frequency outside our normal spectrum. I can provide the dimensional coordinates, the collector offered, pulling a device from its robes that pulsed with impossible mathematics. I've catalogued the breach signature from the boy's arrival. Replicating the pathway in reverse is possible, though it will require significant mystical energy and precise timing. The Sorcerer Supreme's abilities combined with my dimensional technology should suffice. Danny should have felt relief. This was the solution, a way home that would save both him and this universe from his destructive presence. But something about the collector's sudden helpfulness felt wrong. Why would you help me get home if you wanted to collect me? The collector's masked face turned toward him, and Danny swore he could feel it smiling behind the crystallized time. Because unsuccessful collection is preferable to dimensional collapse. If your presence destroys this reality, you'll be destroyed with it, and my opportunity for study will be lost. Better you survive in your native dimension than perish here alongside this Earth. Besides, it gestured to the projection showing the fractures. The process of sending you home will generate fascinating data on cross-dimensional transportation and dimensional barrier repair. I collect experiences and knowledge, as well as specimens. So everyone wins, Peter said, though his tone suggested he trusted this being about as far as he could web-sling it. Danny goes home, Earth stays stable, and the creepy cosmic collector gets its data. What's the catch? The catch, Strange said grimly, is that creating a stable dimensional bridge will take time to prepare. Days, possibly a week. And during that time, Danny's fractures will continue spreading, and the entities those fractures attract will grow increasingly dangerous. He looked at Danny with an expression mixing sympathy and calculation. You'll need protection, proper protection, not just the Sanctum's wards. Which means... S.H.I.E.L.D., Danny finished, his heart sinking. Or the Avengers, the collector suggested. Both factions monitor for dimensional threats. Both have resources to contain escalating dangers, and both are already aware of your presence. It gestured, and another projection appeared showing the scene outside the Sanctum. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s perimeter had grown. More agents, more equipment, and now several figures in distinctive armor and uniforms that Danny recognized from news footage. Iron Man stood at the perimeter, his red and gold armor gleaming. Beside him, War Machine, Vision hovering slightly off the ground, and Black Widow coordinating with Agent Hill, Tony Stark's faction of the Avengers, responding to what they clearly perceived as a major threat. They'll want me to register, Danny said quietly. They'll want you to accept accountability, the collector corrected with clinical precision. The Sokovia Accords exist because enhanced individuals operating without oversight have caused significant collateral damage. You are, by definition, an unregistered, enhanced individual who has now attracted multiple interdimensional incursions to New York City. From their perspective, you're exactly the type of threat the Accords were designed to address. Peter's hands clenched into fists. He's not a threat. He's a kid who got pulled into a dimension that's literally incompatible with his biology, and he's been trying to help the whole time. Intent is irrelevant to consequences. the Collector stated. The demons came seeking him. The mindless one targeted him. The dimensional fractures radiate from him. His heroism doesn't negate the danger his presence creates. Danny wanted to argue, but the entity was right. He'd spent 2 years in Amity Park fighting ghosts that came through because of his parents' portal. A portal he'd activated. He'd always felt responsible for the Ghost Zone's intrusions into his world. Now he was the intrusion, the anomaly, the source of problems for an entire universe that had done nothing to deserve his presence. Strange was watching him carefully. Danny, the Collector's assessment is harsh, but not inaccurate. Your options are limited. You can remain in the Sanctum under my protection, but that only delays the inevitable confrontation with S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers. You can surrender to S.H.I.E.L.D. custody, accept registration, and work within their system until we can send you home. Or, he paused, choosing his words carefully. Or you can meet with the Avengers on neutral terms, explain your situation, and see if they're willing to offer protection without demanding full compliance with the Accords. That third option didn't work out great for Captain America, Peter pointed out. Captain America had American citizenship and chose to violate the Accords on principle, Strange replied. Danny is a dimensional refugee whose presence is creating measurable threats to reality. The circumstances are different enough that Tony Stark might be willing to negotiate. Might being the key word, Wong added, entering the conversation for the first time in minutes. He'd been watching the projections, doing his own calculations. Stark is brilliant but paranoid, especially after Ultron. A teenager who can turn invisible, intangible, and possess people. That's every security expert's nightmare. Danny's ghost core pulsed uncomfortably at the mention of overshadowing. He'd used that power exactly once since arriving in this universe, possessing a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent during his escape with Spider-Man, and the guilt still sat heavy in his chest. Violating someone's autonomy, even temporarily, felt wrong in ways his other powers didn't. I won't overshadow anyone, Danny said firmly. That power, it's too much, too invasive. I used it back home only when absolutely necessary, and even then it felt like crossing a line. The Collector's masked face tilted. Curious. You possess an ability that grants ultimate infiltration and control, yet you refuse to use it on moral grounds. That level of self-imposed limitation is inefficient, but fascinating. It's called having principles, Peter shot back. You should try it sometime. Before the Collector could respond, the Sanctum's alarms chimed with a different pattern. Strange waved open another viewing portal showing Tony Stark at the perimeter, his armor's speakers projecting his voice with enough volume to bypass the wards. Dr. Strange, I know you can hear me. We need to talk about your dimensional house guest before this situation escalates further. I'm not here to arrest anyone. I'm here to offer solutions. Let's be adults about this. Strange sighed, a sound of deep weariness. He's right. Hiding in the Sanctum indefinitely isn't sustainable. The dimensional fractures will worsen, more entities will come, and eventually the wards won't be enough. He looked at Danny with an expression mixing mentorship and apology. You're going to have to face them eventually. The question is whether you face them as a fugitive or as someone willing to cooperate. Danny thought of Sam and Tucker, who'd stood by him even when the entire town thought he was evil. He thought of Jazz, who'd kept his secret and helped him navigate impossible choices. He thought of his parents who loved him but would hunt Danny Fenton without hesitation if they knew the truth. He thought of what it meant to be a hero, when being a hero meant accepting help from people you didn't fully trust. Okay, Danny said finally. I'll meet with them, but I'm not registering, and I'm not going into S.H.I.E.L.D. custody. I'll explain the situation, offer to help prepare the dimensional bridge home, and work with them to contain whatever threats my presence attracts until I can leave. But they have to treat me like a person, not a problem to be solved. Strange nodded approvingly. Reasonable terms. I'll accompany you as mediator and ensure they honor those conditions. I'll come too, Peter said immediately. moral support, and someone who actually trusts you." The collector folded its hands, the gesture almost human despite its otherworldly nature. "Then I shall observe this negotiation with great interest. The intersection of heroic idealism and pragmatic accountability is always enlightening." Danny took a deep breath, unnecessary for a ghost, but comforting nonetheless, and let his transformation drop. White hair faded to black, green eyes to blue, the hazmat suit to regular clothes that were getting pretty worn after a day of interdimensional chaos. Danny Fenton stood in the Sanctum's library, a scared teenager far from home, preparing to face Earth's mightiest heroes with nothing but his principles and a determination not to compromise them. "Let's get this over with," he said. Strange opened a portal directly to the street outside, and Danny stepped through into a universe that wanted to help him, control him, study him, or send him home. Possibly all of the above. Tony Stark's helmet retracted, revealing a face that mixed concern, curiosity, and calculation in equal measure. "So," Tony said, "you must be the kid who's been breaking reality. We need to talk." The impromptu meeting took place in a SHIELD mobile command center that had been hastily converted into neutral ground. Meaning Strange had warded it against surveillance, and Tony had disabled half the recording equipment with a few taps on his gauntlet. Danny sat on one side of a table with Strange and Peter flanking him like bodyguards. Across from them sat Tony Stark, James Rhodes in his War Machine armor, and Vision, whose synthetic face regarded Danny with unsettling curiosity. Agent Hill stood by the door, arms crossed, radiating disapproval. Black Widow leaned against the wall, silent and watchful in a way that made Danny's ghost sense tingle even though she was completely human. "Let me see if I understand correctly," Tony began, his fingers tapping a rapid rhythm on the table. "You're from another dimension entirely. You got pulled here through a dimensional breach caused by a fight with a ghost king. Your powers are deteriorating because this universe doesn't have the right dimensional infrastructure, and your presence here is slowly creating cracks in reality that attract interdimensional nasties. Is that about right?" "Pretty much," Danny confirmed, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. "The collector says I've got maybe a week before the fractures get bad enough to cause serious problems. Dr. Strange thinks he can send me home before then, but it's going to take time to set up." "The collector," Rhodey repeated, glancing at Tony. "As in the interdimensional entity currently hovering outside this command center, radiating enough cosmic energy to set off every sensor we have. That collector?" Strange nodded. "It's agreed to provide the dimensional coordinates for Danny's home reality in exchange for observing the return process. Mercenary motivation, but useful." Tony leaned back, his arc reactor glowing blue through his shirt. "Okay, here's my problem. You seem like a decent kid trying to do the right thing, and I'm sympathetic to the whole dimensional refugee situation. Really, I am. But from a security perspective, you're a walking disaster waiting to happen. Invisibility, intangibility, flight, energy projection, and, according to SHIELD's reports, the ability to possess people. That's not even getting into the dimensional instability issue." "I don't possess people," Danny said firmly. "Not anymore. Not unless there's literally no other choice." "But you can." Natasha Romanoff spoke for the first time, her voice soft but cutting. "That's what matters from a threat assessment perspective. Capability equals threat, regardless of stated intentions." Peter bristled beside Danny. "That's not fair. Danny's shown nothing but restraint since he got here. He saved civilians at that bank robbery, helped fight the demons at the Sanctum, and he's cooperating right now when he could have just stayed hidden. Treating him like a villain when he's been acting like a hero is exactly the kind of thinking that got the Avengers split in the first place." Tony's expression flickered with something that might have been regret. "Kid, and I'm saying this to both of you, heroic intentions don't prevent catastrophic accidents. Ask the people of Sokovia, ask the families affected by Ultron. I created that monster trying to protect the world, and good intentions didn't stop it from nearly destroying everything. "I'm not Ultron," Danny said, keeping his voice level despite the anger building in his chest. "I'm not a robot programmed to kill. I'm a person who's trying to survive in a universe that's literally incompatible with my existence while dealing with the fact that my presence here is causing problems I never intended." "Which brings us to the Sokovia Accords," Agent Hill interjected, pulling out a tablet. "Enhanced individuals operating on U.S. soil are required to register name, powers, limitations, and oversight protocols. It's not negotiable." "It's completely negotiable," Strange countered smoothly. "Danny isn't a U.S. citizen. He's not even from this Earth. Applying domestic law to a dimensional refugee is legally dubious at best and politically complicated at worst. What happens when other dimensions start demanding we hand over their citizens who seek asylum here? You're setting precedent." Vision, who'd been silently observing, finally spoke. His voice carried the weight of the Mind Stone's processing power. "The legal argument is sound, but it doesn't address the practical concern. Danny's presence creates measurable risks. The dimensional fractures are real. The attracted entities are dangerous. Whether he registers or not, those problems require management. Which is why I'm offering to help," Danny said, forcing himself to meet Vision's unsettling gaze. "Dr. Strange is preparing the ritual to send me home. Until then, I'll work with whoever needs to deal with the threats my presence attracts. I'll fight the demons, the mindless ones, whatever comes through because of me. I'll help contain the damage, but I won't give S.H.I.E.L.D. my real identity. I won't submit to government custody, and I won't let you treat me like a weapon to be controlled." Tony studied him for a long moment, and Danny could practically see the calculations running behind those intelligent eyes. "You remind me of someone," Tony said finally. "Idealistic, stubborn, convinced his principles matter more than pragmatic solutions. It's admirable right up until it gets people killed." "You're talking about Captain America," Danny said. "Peter told me about the Civil War." "Did he tell you that Steve's refusal to compromise led to good people getting hurt? That his team operated as fugitives, causing international incidents because they thought they knew better than everyone else?" Tony's voice had an edge now. "I respect Steve Rogers. I'd die for him if it came down to it. But he was wrong about the Accords, and people paid the price for his righteousness." Strange cleared his throat. "With respect, Mr. Stark, comparing Danny's situation to Captain America's is disingenuous. Steve Rogers chose to become a fugitive rather than submit to oversight. He found morally objectionable. Danny is choosing to maintain his identity's privacy while cooperating with containment efforts. Those are not equivalent positions. They both boil down to, 'I'll help, but only on my terms,'" Hill countered, which is exactly the kind of conditional heroism the Accords were designed to prevent. Danny felt his frustration building. This conversation was going in circles, and every minute they spent arguing was a minute closer to the next dimensional incursion. "Look, I get that you don't trust me. I understand why, but I'm offering you a compromise. I work with you, fight alongside you, help prevent the disasters my presence is causing, and in exchange, you don't force me to reveal my civilian identity or submit to permanent government control. When Dr. Strange completes the ritual, I go home, your universe heals, and everyone's happy. What part of that is unacceptable?" Tony and Rhodey exchanged glances, some unspoken communication passing between them. Then Tony sighed, the sound of someone making a decision he didn't entirely like. "Okay, here's what I'm willing to do. You work with us as an independent asset during crisis response. We provide resources, coordination, and backup. You provide your powers and cooperation with threat containment. We don't push for registration right now, but you check in regularly with either Strange or my team so we know you haven't gone rogue or gotten possessed by something nasty from the dark dimension." "And when I go home?" Danny asked. "When you go home, this conversation never happened. You're not registered, not documented, not in any of our systems. As far as official records go, you were a dimensional anomaly that resolved itself. clean slate. Tony's expression hardened. But if you're still here in 2 weeks and those fractures haven't healed, we revisit this conversation with a lot less flexibility. Deal? It wasn't perfect. Danny would have preferred complete autonomy, no oversight, just trust in his heroism. But he recognized an olive branch when one was offered, and Tony Stark's compromise was better than SHIELD custody or fugitive status. Deal, Danny said, extending his hand. Tony shook it, his grip firm. Welcome to the team, Ghost Kid. Temporarily. Don't make me regret this. Peter let out a breath Danny hadn't realized he'd been holding. Strange nodded with what might have been approval. Even Hill seemed marginally less hostile, though Natasha's expression remained unreadable. Now that we've established working parameters, Vision said, we should address the immediate tactical concerns. Dr. Strange, what is your timeline for the dimensional bridge ritual? Strange pulled out the mystical calculations he'd been working on. 5 to 7 days, assuming no major interruptions. I need to triangulate Danny's home dimension's signature, gather specific materials that exist only in certain mystical dimensions, and perform preliminary tests to ensure the bridge won't collapse mid-transit. It's delicate work that can't be rushed without catastrophic risk. And during those 5 to 7 days, more entities will be attracted to Danny's signature, Rhodey stated. We need a defensive strategy. The Sanctum can handle most mystical threats, Strange said. But if something physical or technological comes through, I'll need backup. The masters of the mystic arts are powerful, but we're better suited to dimensional defense than conventional combat. Tony nodded, already accessing holographic displays from his armor's systems. Friday. Start a priority alert protocol. Any dimensional anomalies, mystical energy spikes, or reality fractures within 100 miles of New York get flagged immediately. Assign Rhodey and Vision to rapid response. I'll coordinate with Strange on... The alert sirens went off before he could finish. Every device in the command center lit up simultaneously. Tony's holographic displays showed a massive energy spike in Central Park. Strange's mystical wards flared with warning. Vision's eyes glowed as he processed the incoming data. Dimensional breach, Vision reported, his voice tight with urgency. Significantly larger than previous incursions. Energy signature matches no known mystical dimension. Estimated entity size. He paused. Comparable to a Chitauri Leviathan. Danny's ghost sense exploded with warning, the cold spreading through his chest so intensely his transformation triggered involuntarily. White hair, green eyes, hazmat suit. Danny Fenton manifested in full view of the Avengers as his core screamed about the thing tearing through reality. It's not attracted to me, Danny said, his voice tight with certainty born from 2 years of hunting ghosts. It's hunting me, and it's angry. Through the command center's windows, they could see the dimensional tear opening above Central Park. A wound in reality leaking purple energy that looked nothing like the dark dimension or the collector's starlight rifts. What emerged was massive, serpentine, covered in crystalline scales that reflected impossible colors, and it was screaming Danny's name. Not his hero name, his civilian identity. Danny Fenton, the creature roared across dimensional frequencies that made every glass window in a 3-block radius crack. The ghost zone demands your return. You will be retrieved. Peter looked at Danny with wide eyes. Did that thing just... Yeah, Danny whispered, horror settling in his core. The ghost zone sent something to bring me back, and it knows who I really am. Tony's helmet snapped back into place, his arc reactor charging. Well, this just got complicated. Central Park had been evacuated by the time the Avengers arrived. SHIELD agents herding terrified civilians away from the dimensional tear that pulsed like an infected wound in reality. The serpentine entity coiled in the air above Belvedere Castle. its crystalline scales catching light in ways that hurt to look at directly. Danny recognized it now. A keeper, one of the Ghost Zone's ancient enforcers, tasked with maintaining dimensional boundaries and retrieving wayward ghosts. "Danny Fenton," it called again, its voice resonating across multiple frequencies. "You have violated dimensional integrity. Return to the Ghost Zone for judgment." "That thing knows your real name," Tony said, his repulsors charging as the team spread out. War Machine took position on the left flank, vision hovering high for aerial advantage. Strange and Wong began tracing containment circles, and Peter had already vanished to get into position. How? "The Ghost Zone has records of every entity that's ever crossed over," Danny explained, floating beside Iron Man while his hands crackled with silver-blue energy. "When I became half ghost, I became part of those records. Every ghost knows Danny Phantom and Danny Fenton are the same person. It's not a secret there. It's just information the zone tracks." "Great," Rhodey muttered over the comm. "So much for maintaining your civilian identity." The Keeper's multiple eyes fixed on Danny, and despite its alien nature, he could read the determination in its crystalline gaze. "You will return voluntarily, or I will extract you forcibly. The Ghost Zone's balance has been disrupted by your absence. Ghosts cross over unchecked. The portal remains unstable. Your presence is required to restore order." Danny felt his core twist with guilt. He'd been so focused on getting home that he hadn't considered what his absence meant for Amity Park. Without Danny Phantom, who was stopping Skulker? The Box Ghost? Technus? His parents could fight ghosts, but they weren't fast enough, weren't strong enough to handle the really dangerous ones. "I want to go home," Danny called back. "But I can't just leave. My presence here is causing dimensional fractures. If I go back now, before Doctor Strange seals the pathway properly, the damage could spread to both dimensions. Give me 1 week. Let Strange complete the ritual, and I'll return safely." The Keeper's scales rippled with colors that suggested deep consideration. 1 week risks further dimensional contamination. The Ghost Zone requires your immediate return. "The Ghost Zone can wait 7 days, Strange interjected, his voice amplified by magic. "I am the Sorcerer Supreme of this reality, guardian of Earth's dimensional barriers. I'm telling you that ripping this boy back through an uncontrolled portal will create cascading failures in both our realities. Let me do this properly." "Sorcerer," the Keeper acknowledged, some of its multiple eyes turning toward Strange. "Your expertise in dimensional matters is noted, but the half-ghost's return is not negotiable. If he does not return within your specified time frame, I will return with greater force." "That's fair," Danny started to say, relief flooding through him. Then the Keeper added, "However, to ensure compliance and prevent flight risk, I will claim a hostage from this dimension. When the half-ghost returns, the hostage will be released. If he fails to return, the hostage will be held indefinitely in the Ghost Zone as compensation for dimensional disruption." The temperature around the park dropped 20 degrees. Danny's ghost sense went haywire as the Keeper's power manifested more fully, tendrils of ectoplasmic energy reaching out toward the assembled heroes. "Absolutely not," Tony said, repulsors aimed and ready. "We're not doing hostage negotiations with an interdimensional snake." "It's not negotiation," the Keeper stated calmly. "It's insurance. The half-ghost has proven resourceful and unpredictable. A hostage ensures he honors his commitment." The tendrils of energy lashed out toward Strange, clearly identifying the Sorcerer Supreme as the most valuable hostage. Strange's shields flared, blocking the initial attack, but the Keeper was fast, impossibly fast for something so large. A second tendril whipped around the shields and struck toward Vision instead. Vision phased intangible, the energy passing through him harmlessly. "I'm not subject to spectral manipulation," he stated. The Keeper's attention shifted rapidly, analyzing targets, calculating value. Its eyes locked on someone Danny hadn't noticed in the chaos. a SHIELD agent helping with the evacuation. Someone young and determined who'd stayed behind to ensure every civilian got clear. Someone wearing a distinctive jacket with a Midtown High School logo. "No!" Danny and Peter shouted simultaneously, but the Keeper was already moving. The tendril of ectoplasmic energy shot past the defensive line, wrapped around the young woman, and yanked her toward the dimensional tier. She screamed, struggling against the ethereal bonds, and Danny saw Peter's whole body tense with horror. "MJ!" Peter yelled, already web-slinging toward her. Danny moved faster. He went intangible, phasing through space itself with a burst of speed that surprised even him. The astral plane energy he'd learned to channel responded to his desperation, propelling him forward with impossible velocity. He reached MJ just as the Keeper began pulling her toward the rift and made a split-second decision that would haunt him for the rest of his afterlife. He overshadowed her. Danny's consciousness slammed into MJ's mind, pushing her awareness aside, not violently but firmly, seizing control of her body with the possession ability he'd sworn not to use. Through her eyes, he felt her terror, her confusion, her desperate attempt to understand what was happening. He felt her thoughts, her memories, fragments of personality that weren't his. He felt the violation of what he was doing. But her body was now under his control, and that meant he could use his intangibility. Danny as MJ went spectral, slipping free of the ectoplasmic bonds with the Keeper's tendril passing through harmlessly. He flew, MJ's body floating with Danny's power, back to the defensive perimeter and released the possession the instant they touched ground. MJ collapsed, gasping and shaking, and Peter was there immediately, catching her, checking for injuries, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "MJ, are you okay? Talk to me, please. I'm okay," she managed, though her hands trembled violently. Something was inside me. Something cold and... Her eyes found Danny, wide with shock and dawning horror. "That was you. You were in my head." Danny landed nearby, his own hands shaking. "I'm sorry. I had to get you away from that thing, and it was the only way I could make you intangible fast enough. I wouldn't have done it if there was any other option." Peter's masked face turned toward Danny, and even through the white eye pieces, Danny could feel the weight of his stare. "You possessed her. To save her," Danny said, but the words felt hollow even to himself. The Keeper, denied its hostage, coiled above them with what might have been approval. The half-ghost demonstrates why he is valued in the ghost zone. Ruthless efficiency when necessary. Interesting that he uses abilities he claims to find morally objectionable. "Shut up," Danny snarled, his hands blazing with power he wasn't sure he could control. "You forced that situation. You tried to take an innocent person. As you took her autonomy," the Keeper interrupted calmly. "Both actions served a purpose. Both violated consent. The only difference is your justification." Tony's repulsor charged to maximum. Vision, Wong, Strange, containment pattern Delta. We're not letting this thing philosophize about possession while it's sitting in the middle of Central Park. Rhodey, civilian protection. Spider-Man, get MJ somewhere safe. And Danny, Tony paused. Do what you need to do. The battle that followed was chaos. The Keeper proved resistant to conventional weapons. Rhodey's missiles passed through it like smoke. Tony's repulsors scattered off its crystalline scales. Only mystical and ectoplasmic attacks had any effect. Strange and Wong wove binding spells that slowed the creature, but couldn't fully contain it. Vision's Mind Stone beam caused it pain, but not enough to drive it back. Danny fought with everything he had, channeling astral energy through his ectoplasmic core, firing blast after blast at the Keeper while dodging its retaliatory strikes. Each hit drained him more than it should have, his power still inefficient in this universe, his energy reserves depleting rapidly. But he could hurt it, and the Keeper knew it. Your power grows unstable, half-ghost, the Keeper observed, even while defending against the Avengers' combined assault. "You channel energies not native to your physiology. You push toward dimensional collapse yourself." "I don't care," Danny shouted, firing another blast that cracked one of the creature's crystalline scales. "I won't let you take anyone from this world because of me." The Keeper suddenly stopped fighting. It coiled into a defensive position, its multiple eyes studying Danny with what might have been respect. "Your determination is noted. Very well. No hostage will be taken this time. But understand, half-ghost, the Ghost Zone's patience is not infinite. 7 days. Return within that time, or I will return with the authority to take not one hostage, but the entire city as leverage. The Ghost Zone will have you back, one way or another." The dimensional tear began to close, the Keeper retreating through the rift. "1 week, Danny Fenton. Do not make me regret showing mercy." Then it was gone, reality sealing shut behind it with a sound like a sigh of relief. Silence fell over Central Park, broken only by the sound of Danny's ragged breathing and the hum of Tony's cooling repulsors. The Avengers regrouped slowly, checking for injuries, assessing damage. Remarkably, there'd been no casualties. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s evacuation had been thorough, and the Keeper had focused on Danny rather than collateral destruction. Peter approached with MJ leaning on his shoulder. She looked shaken but steady, her journalist's mind already processing what she'd experienced. "You're Danny Phantom," she said, not a question, but a statement. "The ghost hero from the videos, and you can possess people." "I can," Danny admitted, unable to meet her eyes. "And I hate it. I hate that power more than anything else I can do because it's wrong. Violating someone's autonomy, taking control of their body. It's the worst thing I'm capable of, and I try never to use it. But when that thing grabbed you, I had seconds to react, and overshadowing you was the only way to make you intangible fast enough." "You saved my life," MJ said slowly, "by doing something you find morally reprehensible. That doesn't make it okay." "No," she agreed, "but it makes it complicated, which is the problem with power, isn't it? Sometimes the right thing and the wrong thing are the same action, and you just have to live with the consequences." Tony landed beside them, his helmet retracting. "Kid, Danny, we need to talk about what just happened." "I know," Danny said quietly. "You're going to say that my possession ability is too dangerous, that I can't be trusted with that kind of power, that I should submit to S.H.I.E.L.D. custody or register, or... I was going to say that you made an impossible choice under impossible circumstances, and you chose to save someone while hating yourself for the method," Tony interrupted. "That's not the thinking of someone who's a threat. That's the thinking of someone who understands the weight of their power." He paused. "It's also the thinking of someone who's going to torture themselves over this decision for way too long. Trust me, I know the type." Danny looked up, surprised by the understanding in Tony's voice. "Here's the thing about being a hero," Tony continued, his tone unusually gentle. "Sometimes there are no good options. Sometimes every choice is a compromise with your principles, and you just have to pick the compromise you can live with. You saved MJ. You hated doing it the way you did, which means you'll be even more careful about using that power in the future. That's accountability that no registration system can legislate." Peter's hand landed on Danny's shoulder. "For what it's worth, thank you for saving her. And I'm sorry you had to make that choice." Strange approached, Wong beside him. "The Keeper's departure leaves us 7 days to complete the ritual. We should begin immediately." "Agreed," Danny said, grateful for the subject change. "What do you need me to do?" "First, we need to address the elephant in the room," Tony said. "That thing called you Danny Fenton. Your civilian identity is now known to a cosmic entity that can apparently cross dimensions at will. That's a security problem." Danny's heart sank. He'd been so focused on the possession issue that he'd almost forgotten the Keeper had shouted his real name across Central Park. "How many people heard?" "S.H.I.E.L.D. definitely caught it," Rhodey reported, checking his HUD. "It's in the official incident recording. Agent Hill's going to want answers." "Let me handle Hill," Tony said. "I'll convince her that Danny Fenton is an alias the Keeper used, not a real identity. Friday can scrub most of the footage, and we'll spin the narrative as the creature trying psychological warfare. Your secret's not completely blown, but you're going to need to be more careful." Danny nodded, exhaustion settling into his bones. He'd fought a dimensional enforcer, possessed someone to save their life, and had his identity nearly exposed, all in the span of an hour. And he still had 7 days of this before he could go home. MJ was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Not fear exactly, but wariness mixed with curiosity. "For the record," she said, "I'm going to process what you did to me for a while. It was terrifying and invasive, and I'm not entirely okay with it, even if I understand why you did it. But," she paused, "but I'm alive because of you. So thank you, and also never do that again without explicit permission." "Never," Danny promised fervently. "I swear on my grave, both of them." That got a surprised laugh from Peter, and some of the tension eased from the group. They began the walk back toward the sanctum, heroes and civilians together, preparing for the week ahead. Danny fell into step beside Strange, his voice low. "That Keeper said my power was growing unstable, that I'm pushing toward dimensional collapse. Is that true?" Strange's expression was grim. "Partially. The astral energy you're channeling is helping stabilize your abilities, but it's also accelerating the incompatibility between your ectoplasmic core and our reality's framework. Think of it as a temporary fix that's preventing immediate failure, but creating long-term stress fractures. The sooner we send you home, the better, for both you and our dimension." 7 days, Danny said. "We can do this in 7 days, right?" "We have to," Strange replied, "because if we don't, that Keeper will return, and next time, it won't be asking permission." Danny looked back at Central Park, at the spot where the dimensional tear had been, and felt the weight of the countdown pressing down on him. 7 days to learn enough mystical energy control to power the ritual. 7 days to protect this universe from the threats his presence attracted. 7 days to get home before the ghost zone lost patience and took New York City hostage. No pressure at all. The dimensional ritual required 3 things: precise mystical calculations, rare components from other realms, and enough raw power to punch through the barriers between realities without destabilizing both dimensions in the process. Strange and Wong had the first 2 covered. Danny, along with every available hero and sorcerer, would have to provide the 3rd. Day 5 of the countdown arrived with another demon incursion. Smaller than before, but still requiring Strange and Danny to spend 3 hours banishing mindless ones that slipped through Danny's expanding fractures. Day 6 brought a technological response. AIM agents who detected the dimensional instabilities and tried to weaponize them, requiring Iron Man and War Machine to intervene while Danny protected civilians with barriers he could barely maintain. Now, on Day 7, the Sanctum Sanctorum's basement ritual chamber held more mystical and superheroic firepower than Danny had ever seen in one place. Dr. Strange stood at the ritual's center point, the Eye of Agamotto glowing at his chest. Wong flanked him on the left, hands already weaving preparatory spells. The Collector observed from the chamber's periphery, its masked face tilted in fascination as it recorded data on technology Danny couldn't begin to understand. Tony Stark had positioned arc reactor-powered amplifiers around the ritual circle, technological supplements to the mystical energy flow. Vision stood ready to contribute the Mind Stone's power if needed. Peter, who'd barely left Danny's side since the possession incident, waited near the exit with MG, both of them there for moral support despite the danger. And Danny floated at the ritual's focal point, wearing his ghost form like armor, his core pulsing with nervous energy. The principle is straightforward. Strange explained, his voice calm despite the complexity of what they were attempting. We'll create a bridge between this dimension and your ghost zone by synchronizing your ectoplasmic signature with the dimensional coordinates the collector provided. I'll anchor one end of the bridge here. You'll anchor the other end by channeling your core's unique frequency, and Wong will stabilize the pathway to prevent collapse. What could go wrong? Danny asked, trying for humor. The bridge could destabilize mid-transit, scattering your molecules across multiple dimensions, the collector offered helpfully. Or the ghost zone could reject the connection, creating a feedback loop that destroys this chamber. Or your ectoplasmic signature could attract entities from other dimensions to the opening, resulting in a multi-dimensional invasion. Or, thank you, that's sufficient, Strange interrupted. Danny, ignore the catastrophe scenarios. Focus on what you need to do. Channel every bit of astral energy you've learned to access. Let it flow through your core and hold your dimensional frequency steady no matter what. Can you do that? Danny thought about his friends back home, about Sam and Tucker probably fighting ghosts without him, about his parents who were brilliant and loving but would destroy him if they knew what he'd become, about Jazz, who'd kept his secret and deserved to have her little brother back. I can do it, he said. Strange nodded, and the ritual began. Golden light erupted from the Sorcerers Supreme's hands, tracing patterns in the air that defied Euclidean geometry. Wong's magic joined Strange's, purple energy weaving through the golden patterns like thread through cloth. The chamber's temperature dropped as mystical forces built, reality thinning at the designated focal point. Now, Danny, Strange commanded. Danny reached deep into his core, past the cold that defined his ghost half, past the human warmth that kept him tethered to life, down to the quantum superposition that made him unique. He channeled astral energy the way Strange had taught him, not forcing it, but flowing with it, letting it pass through his spectral form and out into the ritual circle. Silver-blue light joined gold and purple. The three energies intertwined, creating a harmonic resonance that made the air hum with power. Danny felt the ritual pulling at his core, using his unique dimensional signature as a tuning fork to find his home reality among infinite possible dimensions. Then the pain started. It felt like being pulled apart and compressed simultaneously, like every cell in his body was being examined and catalogued and stretched across impossible distances. Danny screamed, his ghost form flickering between solid and intangible, but he held his concentration. The astral energy continued to flow, his core continued to pulse, and the dimensional bridge began to form. A tear opened in reality, not a wound like the demon incursions, but a doorway. Through it, Danny could see green, the familiar, sickly green of the ghost zone's ectoplasmic energy. Home. Almost there, Strange shouted over the rising power. Hold it steady. That's when the attack came. Not from outside the sanctum, from within the ritual itself. The dimensional bridge was a pathway between worlds, and something had been waiting for exactly this kind of opening. It surged through the partially formed connection, a presence of pure malevolence that Danny recognized with horror that clenched his core. Danny Fenton, his evil future self. The entity that crashed into the ritual chamber wore Danny's face twisted by cruelty, white hair wild, eyes blazing red instead of green. It was what Danny would become in a terrible future, a fusion of himself and Vlad Master's ghost half, freed from all humanity and morality. He'd defeated this version of himself before, trapped it in the Fenton thermos and locked it away in Clockwork's tower in the ghost zone. Apparently, the dimensional chaos had set it free. Did you really think, Dan snarled, his voice layered with harmonics that hurt to hear, that I'd let you return home to prevent my timeline? The ritual's connection to the ghost zone gave me the perfect opportunity to escape, and now I'm going to make sure you never get back. Dan's hands blazed with ectoplasmic energy far more powerful than Danny's. This was him at full strength, enhanced by years of cruel evolution, unburdened by heroic restraint. The blast he fired wasn't aimed at Danny, it was aimed at Strange. Tony's arc reactor flared, projecting a shield that took the hit and shattered. Vision phased to intercept, but Dan was faster. Already firing a second blast at Wong that disrupted the stabilization spell. The ritual circle wavered, the dimensional bridge beginning to collapse. No! Danny threw himself between Dan and the ritual, his own ecto-blasts meeting his evil self's attacks in midair. The collision of energies exploded with force that cracked the chamber's mystical wards. Dan laughed, a sound of pure cruelty. You're weak here, Danny. Incompatible with this universe's physics, running on borrowed energy. I'm at full power, fresh from the ghost zone. This isn't a fight, it's an execution. He was right. Danny could feel it in every exchange of blows. Dan's attacks hit harder, moved faster, burned with the cold fury of the ghost zone's pure ectoplasm. Danny's astral-enhanced abilities held their own, but only barely. And the effort of maintaining both the ritual connection and defending against Dan was draining him catastrophically fast. Strange tried to restore the ritual's stability while simultaneously defending against Dan's area attacks. Wong erected barriers that Dan shattered with contemptuous ease. Tony and Vision engaged with repulsors and Mind Stone beams, but Dan phased through them intangibly, laughing at their futility. "You can't stop me," Dan declared, blasting through another of Wong's barriers. "You can't even slow me down. I'm everything you'll become, all your power without your pathetic morality. Accept it, Danny. Accept that this universe is where you die, alone and forgotten, while I return home to create the timeline where I..." Peter's web hit Dan in the face. It wasn't strategic. It wasn't powerful. It was a teenager with web shooters deciding that the evil future ghost needed to shut up. But it surprised Dan enough that he stopped monologuing, and that gave Danny the opening he needed. Not to attack, to do something far more desperate. Danny flew straight at Dan and embraced him. His evil future self recoiled in shock, trying to phase intangible, but Danny matched him frequency for frequency. Their ectoplasmic signatures were identical at the fundamental level. Same core, same origin, same quantum superposition. Where Dan expected combat, Danny gave him something else entirely. He overshadowed his own evil future. The possession was nothing like overshadowing MJ or the few times he'd done it to living humans. Dan wasn't alive. He was pure ghost, pure consciousness without physical form. When Danny's awareness slammed into Dan's, there was no body to control, only mind to mind, will against will, two versions of the same person fighting for dominance inside a single spectral form. Danny experienced Dan's memories, saw the timeline where Jazz died, where his friends died, where grief and guilt shattered him completely, saw himself begging Vlad to remove his human half, believing the emotions were the problem, saw the fusion of his ghost half with Vlad's, creating something new and terrible, saw years of destruction, of proving his power by destroying everything good he'd once protected. And Dan experienced Danny's memories, felt the choice to stay human, to embrace both halves of his nature, felt the bonds with Sam and Tucker that remained unbroken, felt Jazz's love and his parents' potential acceptance, felt every heroic choice, every villain defeated without killing, every civilian saved through sacrifice. You could have been this, Danny's consciousness forced into Dan's awareness. You could have stayed whole, stayed good, stayed human. I am power without weakness, Dan's consciousness shot back, trying to force Danny out. I am what you're afraid to become. You're what I refuse to become, Danny countered, and he pulled, not trying to control Dan, trying to merge with him. The astral energy Danny had learned to channel surged through the connection, weaving itself into Dan's ectoplasmic structure. The silver-blue light of the Marvel Universe's mystical dimensions met the pure green of the Ghost Zone's ectoplasm, and something impossible happened. They harmonized. Danny felt power flooding through him, not Dan's cruelty, but Dan's strength. The full capacity of his ghostly abilities, unrestricted by dimensional incompatibility, enhanced by the astral energy he'd learned to channel. His ectoplasmic core, which had struggled for days to function in the Marvel Universe, suddenly roared to full power. Dan felt something he hadn't experienced in years: connection. The astral energy carried echoes of the bonds Danny had formed in this universe. Strange's mentorship, Peter's friendship, the Avengers' cautious trust. It reminded Dan of what he'd lost, what he'd destroyed in his timeline. It reminded him of his humanity. The merged form that emerged from the possession glowed with energy that shifted between green and silver blue. Neither one nor the other, but something new. Danny opened his eyes, his own again, but seeing with dual perspective, and found he could maintain both powers simultaneously. Ghost Zone ectoplasm channeled through astral energy pathways, creating a hybrid that functioned perfectly in both dimensions. He turned that power toward the collapsing ritual. Strange. Now, Danny's voice echoed with harmonics that carried both versions of himself. The Sorcerer Supreme didn't hesitate. He redirected the ritual's energy flow, using Danny's sudden surge of power as the anchor it needed. Wong stabilized the pathways with renewed vigor. Tony's amplifiers hummed with overload warnings but held steady. The dimensional bridge completed with a sound like reality singing. Through the fully formed portal, Danny could see the Ghost Zone clearly now, his home dimension waiting for his return. But he could also feel Dan's consciousness inside his own, separate but connected, two versions of himself existing in temporary fusion. "Go," Strange commanded, "before the bridge destabilizes." Danny hesitated. "Dan, my future self, he's still merged with me. If I go back like this, then you'll bring him home as part of yourself," the Collector observed with clinical interest. "A paradox, but potentially stable. Your merged state may prevent his dark timeline from occurring by ensuring he never exists separately. Or he could split from you once you're back in the Ghost Zone and destroy everything," Tony pointed out. "Not a great gamble." Danny felt Dan's consciousness stir within his own. "What will you do?" Danny asked internally. "If I bring you home, if we separate, will you try to create your timeline again?" Dan's response was complicated. Anger, grief, defiance, but underlying it all, something that felt like exhaustion. "I saw your memories," Dan's voice echoed in Danny's mind. "Saw the choices you made differently. Maybe that timeline doesn't have to happen. Maybe I don't have to exist." "You do exist," Danny countered. "You're here now. The question is whether you choose to be a villain or find another way." Before Dan could respond, another alarm shrieked through the sanctum. The Keeper had returned. It materialized outside the ritual chamber, its crystalline form larger than before and accompanied by dozens of smaller entities. Ghost Zone enforcers prepared to take the city hostage if Danny refused to return. "Time's up, half-ghost," the Keeper's voice boomed. "Return now, or Manhattan becomes Ghost Zone property." "He's going," Strange shouted, even as the ritual bridge began flickering with instability. "The bridge is open. Danny, go now." Danny looked at Peter, at MJ, at Tony and Vision and Wong. At the heroes who'd helped him despite the danger, who'd taught him to adapt when his powers failed, who'd trusted him even when he possessed someone to save her life. "Thank you," Danny said, his voice carrying gratitude he couldn't fully express. "For everything. For giving me a chance when I was just a dimensional problem. For being heroes." Peter's masked face tilted. "That's what heroes do. Now get home before that giant ghost snake destroys my city." Danny turned to the bridge. feeling Dan's consciousness merged with his own, carrying power from 2 dimensions. He thought about the week he'd spent in the Marvel Universe, fighting demons, learning mystical arts, struggling with impossible choices, discovering what it meant to be a hero in a world of gods and monsters. Then he flew through the dimensional bridge, back toward the ghost zone, back toward home. The portal sealed behind him with a thunderclap that shook the sanctum's foundations. The keeper observed the closure, its multiple eyes studying the space where the bridge had been, then turned its crystalline form back toward its own portal. "The half-ghost has returned," it declared. "The ghost zone is satisfied. Manhattan is spared." Then it vanished, taking its enforcement swarm with it, leaving the Avengers and Sorcerers in a ritual chamber that still hummed with residual dimensional energy. Strange slumped against the altar, exhaustion written across his face. "It's done. He's home. The fractures should begin healing immediately. And we just let him go with an evil version of himself merged into his consciousness," Tony said, his helmet retracting to show a face tight with concern. "That's not ominous at all." "Danny made his choice," Peter said quietly. "He saved us from a dimensional crisis, fought alongside us, and went home carrying the weight of his own dark future. That's the most heroic thing I've ever seen." In the ghost zone, Danny Fenton emerged from the dimensional portal into familiar green infinity. The merge with Dan was already beginning to separate, 2 consciousness pulling apart now that they were back in their native dimension. But something had changed. Dan's essence carried traces of the astral energy, of the connections Danny had formed, of the reminder that humanity wasn't weakness. "What will you do now?" Danny asked as they separated completely. Dan floated before him, still powerful, still dangerous, but somehow different. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I saw your timeline. Saw that it's possible to be strong without being cruel. Maybe..." He trailed off, then vanished into the ghost zone's depths without another word. Danny was about to follow, to chase down his evil future self and ensure he couldn't cause harm, when familiar voices called his name. "Danny!" Sam and Tucker were flying toward him on a Fenton speeder, Jazz piloting with an expression of intense relief. Behind them, Danny could see Amity Park's skyline, see the familiar buildings and streets of home. "You're back!" Tucker shouted. "We thought you were gone forever. It's been a week and the ghosts have been going crazy and your parents are losing their minds and..." "I'm sorry," Danny said, transforming mid-flight back to Danny Fenton, exhausted but whole. "I got pulled to another dimension. It's a really long story." "We've got time," Jazz said, pulling him into a hug tight enough to be uncomfortable. "You're home. That's all that matters." As they flew back toward Amity Park, Danny looked back at the spot where the dimensional bridge had been. Somewhere in another universe, the Marvel heroes were dealing with the aftermath of a crisis he'd caused just by existing in their reality. Somewhere, Peter Parker was probably making jokes to MJ about the ghost kid who saved her life. Somewhere, Strange was recording notes about dimensional incompatibility and hybrid entities. And here, Danny was home, carrying memories of a universe where heroes assembled to fight impossible threats, where power came with responsibility that heroes chose to honor, where even a half-ghost from another dimension could make a difference. He'd gone to the Marvel Universe as an anomaly and left as something more. A hero who'd learned that sometimes the right choice meant accepting help, that adaptation was survival, and that true heroism meant making impossible decisions with grace. But he was still just a 16-year-old kid trying to protect his town from ghosts while passing high school. Some things, apparently, were universal. 3 weeks after Danny Phantom's return to the Ghost Zone, Dr. Strange stood in the Sanctum Sanctorum's library, examining the dimensional barriers around Earth. The fractures had healed cleanly, leaving only the faintest scars in reality's fabric, marks that would fade completely within months. The crisis had been averted. The ghost boy had gone home. Earth's mystical defenses remained intact. So why did Strange feel like they'd missed something important? The dimensional readings are stable, Wong confirmed, reviewing his own mystical calculations. No residual ectoplasmic contamination, no weakened points in the barriers. It's as if Danny Fenton was never here. Except for the memories, Peter Parker said from his perch by the window. He'd been visiting the sanctum regularly since Danny's departure. Ostensibly to learn more about dimensional threats, but really, Strange suspected, because the teen hero needed someone to talk to about what he'd witnessed. And the fact that we all know ghosts are real now, and that evil future selves are apparently a thing we have to worry about. Strange allowed himself a slight smile. The multiverse is full of concerning possibilities, Spider-Man. Evil futures barely scratch the surface. His amusement faded as he noticed something in the dimensional readings, a subtle fluctuation in the barriers that shouldn't exist. Not a fracture, more like a resonance, as if something was maintaining a connection to their reality, a thread left behind when the bridge closed. Wong, Strange said carefully. When Danny merged with his future self and passed through the bridge, did we account for dimensional echo effects? Wong's expression shifted to alarm. We did not. You think the merge created a sustained link between dimensions? Before Strange could respond, his mystical alarms chimed with a pattern he'd come to recognize over the past month. Ectoplasmic energy signature detected. But this one was different. Weaker, more controlled, and coming from inside the sanctum rather than breaking through from outside. They found the source in the artifact storage room. A Fenton thermos, the device Danny had mentioned using to capture ghosts, sat on one of the shelves, glowing faintly with green energy. Strange didn't remember storing it there. More concerning, it hadn't been there yesterday when Wong had inventoried the room. Peter reached for it, but Strange caught his hand. Don't. That's ectoplasmic technology from another dimension. We don't know how it interacts with our reality. There's a note, Peter said, pointing to a piece of paper tucked under the thermos. Strange retrieved it carefully, unfolding paper that felt slightly wrong. Too smooth, too cold, manufactured in a dimension with different physical laws. The handwriting was hasty but legible. Dr. Strange, I know I said I wouldn't come back, but there's something you need to know. Dan, my evil future self, didn't stay in the ghost zone. He's adapted somehow, learned to channel the astral energy he absorbed during our merge. He can move between dimensions now, and he's interested in your universe. Specifically, he's interested in powerful artifacts and people who might help him become even stronger. I've been tracking him through the ghost zone, trying to contain him, but he's too powerful for me to capture alone. The Fenton thermos is the only thing that can hold him, but I'll need help using it if he comes to your reality. I'm not asking you to fight my battle, but if Dan shows up in New York looking for power, you should know what you're dealing with. He's me without humanity, with years of experience being cruel, now enhanced by mystical energy that shouldn't exist in a ghost. I've marked the thermos with a dimensional beacon. If Dan crosses over, the beacon will activate and I'll come through to help. I owe you that much for helping me get home. Also, tell Spider-Man that MJ reached out to me through some kind of mystical internet connection Strange set up. Long story. She says she's processing the possession thing in therapy, but appreciates that I saved her life. She wants me to know she doesn't blame me, which is more forgiveness than I deserve. Thanks for everything. I hope we don't have to see each other again, but if we do, I'll be ready. Danny Fenton. Strange lowered the note slowly, his analytical mind already working through the implications. A dimensional bridge that was meant to close permanently now has a connection point. An evil entity with hybrid dimensional powers loose in the multiverse, and a teenage hero who's taken responsibility for containing his own dark future. That's both really heroic and really stupid, Peter observed, which honestly tracks for Danny. Wong examined the thermos with mystical sight, his expression growing increasingly concerned. This technology operates on principles completely foreign to our physics. It creates a pocket dimension inside the container, compresses spectral entities into that space, and holds them in stasis. Elegant, if terrifying. And if Danny's right about Dan being able to cross dimensions, then we have a new threat to monitor. Strange finished. One that knows our capabilities, understands our mystical defenses, and has personal motivation to prove himself superior to the heroes who helped his better self. Peter's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his whole body language shifted to alert. "Guys, we've got a situation. Tony's sending a general alert. Something just triggered mystical and technological sensors simultaneously in Hell's Kitchen. Jarvis can't identify it, but the energy signature matches the records from Danny's dimensional fractures. Strange was already opening a portal, golden light blazing. Suit up, Spider-Man. If Dan Phantom has come to our universe seeking power, he'll quickly discover that Earth has defenders prepared for exactly this kind of threat. They stepped through the portal into Hell's Kitchen's darkness, where mystical energy and spectral cold were already spreading through the streets like fog. And in the center of that supernatural disturbance stood a figure that wore Danny Phantom's face, twisted by years of cruelty. Red eyes blazing in the night, hands crackling with energy that shifted between ectoplasmic green and astral silver blue. Dan Phantom had come to the Marvel Universe, and he wasn't looking for redemption. He was looking for power sources strong enough to make him unstoppable across all dimensions. "Well," Dan said, his voice echoing with harmonics that hurt to hear. "The Sorcerer Supreme and the Spider. How delightful. I was hoping to start with something challenging." His form flickered, demonstrating the intangibility and dimensional phasing that made him nearly impossible to contain. "Tell me, where does this universe keep its Infinity Stones? I'd love to see what happens when a ghost tries to wield cosmic power." Strange's hands blazed with defensive magic. "Spider-Man, activate the beacon. We need Danny Phantom here now." Peter was already pulling out the Fenton thermos, the dimensional beacon flaring to life with green light that pulsed across realities. Somewhere in the ghost zone, an alarm would be triggering, and a 16-year-old half-ghost hero would be scrambling to respond to the crisis his evil future was creating. Dan laughed, the sound of stars dying. "Oh, good. You're calling for backup. I was worried this would be too easy." The battle that followed would force the Sanctum to call in every available Avenger, require Danny Phantom to cross dimensions again despite the damage it caused, and ultimately reveal that Dan's interest in the Marvel Universe went deeper than simple power collection. But that was a story for another time. Doctor Strange sealed the final ward around the dimensional beacon, ensuring it would remain active and stable for future incursions. The battle with Dan had been contained, barely, with Danny Phantom arriving through his emergency bridge and working alongside the Avengers to force his evil future back into the Fenton thermos. The Ghost Boy had returned home immediately after, the bridge sealing shut, but the thermos remained in the Sanctum's vault as insurance. Because Dan Phantom would escape again. Danny had been clear about that. His dark future self was patient, intelligent, and motivated by a drive to prove his superiority across all realities. The thermos could hold him for a time, but not forever. "We're stuck with this," Tony Stark said, reviewing footage of the battle on holographic displays. "A dimensional threat that specifically targets our reality because his better self formed connections here. That's just fantastic." "It's also an opportunity," Vision observed. "Danny Phantom proved himself a capable ally. If we maintain the dimensional beacon and establish protocols for rapid response, we gain a powerful asset against spectral and dimensional threats." Peter, mask off and looking exhausted, managed a tired smile. "Danny would probably help anyway. That's the kind of hero he is." even if it means risking dimensional fractures and facing his own dark future over and over again. Strange closed the vault containing the thermos, mystical locks engaging with sounds that existed in frequencies beyond human hearing. The beacon stays active. If Dan escapes, if dimensional threats emerge, if the ghost zone experiences instabilities that could affect our reality, we'll know, and we'll respond. He turned to face the assembled heroes. Tony, Peter, Vision with Wong documenting everything for the Sanctum's records. What we learned from Danny Phantom's week in our universe is this. Power takes many forms. Heroism requires adaptation, and sometimes the greatest threats come from within ourselves. He faced his dark future and chose to remain the better version despite how much easier it would be to embrace cruelty. That's a lesson worth remembering. In the ghost zone, Danny Phantom floated above Amity Park, watching his town sleep peacefully below. Sam and Tucker had finally stopped asking questions about his interdimensional adventure, and his parents had returned to their usual ghost hunting antics without realizing their son had saved another universe entirely. Jazz knew something significant had happened, but she respected his privacy enough not to push. Dan was locked away again, trapped in a thermos that sat in another dimension's most secure vault. But Danny could feel the connection, the thread linking him to the Marvel Universe through the beacon, the awareness that someday soon he'd be called back. Not as a refugee or an anomaly, as a hero who'd proven himself worthy of standing alongside Earth's mightiest heroes. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The message was brief. Thanks for the assist with Dan. Next time he escapes, and we both know there'll be a next time, we'll be ready. You've got backup now, across dimensions. With great power comes great responsibility. PP. Danny smiled, saving the contact under friendly neighborhood dimensional backup. Then he transformed back to Danny Fenton and flew home, a 16-year-old kid who'd learned that heroism wasn't bound by dimensional barriers, that adaptation was survival, and that sometimes the greatest power was choosing to stay good when darkness offered easier paths. Somewhere in the spaces between realities, dimensional barriers held strong, fractured scars healing, and mystical wards standing ready for the next threat. The Marvel Universe had weathered the Ghost Boy's presence and emerged stronger, wiser, and better prepared for the impossible. And in the Sanctum Sanctorum's vault, the Fenton thermos glowed faintly with contained malevolence, while its dimensional beacon pulsed with readiness. A connection between worlds, a promise of future alliance, and a reminder that some heroes transcend the boundaries of their reality to protect all of them. The Ghost Zone and the Marvel Universe remained separate, their dimensional barriers intact, but the thread between them persisted, thin, controlled, deliberately maintained. So that when the shadows rose again, when Dan Phantom broke free or new threats emerged from the spaces between realities, heroes from both dimensions could assemble to face them together, because that's what heroes did. They adapted. They persevered. They protected their worlds and all worlds beyond, regardless of the cost. And Danny Phantom, half-ghost hero of Amity Park and honorary defender of the Marvel Universe, would be ready when the beacon called him home. For with great power comes great responsibility. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.